Who's on this?
Okay, guys, we're going to start.
Okay.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Calling to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for February 15th at 6 o'clock. And could we please start by standing and saying Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Thank you. Okay. Anyone have any announcements or words of wisdom tonight? In general? Things are kind of quiet. Yeah. All right. Well, we won't delay our starting here. We have a pretty full agenda, but hopefully we will get through it with a level of efficiency tonight. Okay, we don't have any public hearings. We do have open time for the public. Does anybody here have something that they would like to speak on that is not on the agenda? Nobody calling in, I don't think. All right. Then I think our first presentation, actually, is going to be talking about employee premium pay, and Chief Illingsworth is going to present on behalf of a group of town employees. I understand that it's been meeting to discuss this, and for those watching, this is a possibility to be perhaps considered with some of our Arpa funds. And just to be clear, tonight is just our first introduction to what all you've been discussing, and there's no voting tonight, there's no decision tonight. This is the beginning discussion of what's being thought about. So Ian, please, thanks for doing this, and take it away.
Good evening, Ian Illingsworth, Police Chief. I just want to start off by thanking you, thank you for giving me this opportunity to present on behalf of the department heads as well as the town employees that we're representing. I developed a slideshow with the help of some other department heads to try to explain the source of the funding as well as why we're requesting it, as well as the pay schedule. Mm-hmm. It is sorry, John, but the slideshows, there's no frills to it, there's no animation, no videos, it's kind of just short and sweet, okay? It does contain about 100 slides, so we might be here until midnight. No, only joking, only 18 slides, and I'll make sure we get it quick. All right. So on behalf of the employees for the town, I'm presenting this as a proposal to support and recognize the town employees who worked through the historic COVID-19 pandemic to ensure the safety of town citizens and maintain the continuity of town's critical infrastructure. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a little background so that we know where this is coming from and the people watching know where it's coming from. On March 10th, 2020, Governor Baker declared a state of emergency for the state of Massachusetts due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to reduce the spread of the risk of the COVID-19 virus, non-essential governmental institutions and sectors were closed or otherwise tasked to work remotely during this time period. The state of emergency ended on June 15th, 2021. However, in order to maintain support, public safety, and maintain the public safety and maintain the continuity of critical infrastructure, essential services were required to report to work, subsequently increasing the risk of contact with and the infection with an infection of the deadly virus. In November 21, several department heads met to discuss premium pay for eligible town employees and developed a premium pay schedule that we believe was reasonable based on elevated health risk employee groups were exposed to based on the nature of their essential work. So essentially we got together, kind of came up with something that was reasonable and palatable to what we thought would be acceptable to not only the board but also the townspeople. Starting off with definitions, so as I go through this process, and I want to make sure everyone understands where this is eligibility and what qualifies somebody to become or entitled to premium pay if so allocated. So an eligible worker is in the final rule of the Arpa funds. The Treasury, the U.S. Department of Treasury, preserved the definition of an eligible worker as it was defined in the interim rule with minor modifications. And this is in bold because it clarifies that all public employees of recipient governments which Southampton would be, are already included in the interim final rule definition of eligible worker. So what that means is, if you're a public employee, you're automatically an eligible worker. That doesn't necessarily mean, though, you're entitled to premium pay. Essential work is another factor. The Treasury is maintaining the definition of essential work in the final rule without modification as well. The interim rule defined essential work as work that, number one, is not performed while teleworking from a residence, and two, either involves regular in-person interactions with patients, the public, or co-workers of individuals that are performing the work, or regular physical handling of items that were handled by or are rather to be handled by patients, the public, or co-workers of the individual that was performing the work. The Relief Act and the HEROES Act are intertwined. And they're intertwined so much that oftentimes you find these Reader Digest guides as to what a essential worker is. And essential workers often are defined under the HEROES Act because it specifically classifies what consists essential work. And I listed some of these. Some of them did not apply to Southampton, but I listed the ones that I believe do. First responders, that would entail police, fire, EMS, public health department, crews that cleaning work and building maintenance, who work physically performed on the grounds of a facility, so our custodial staff, as well as the highway department that maintains sanitation services, which is to the right of that. The school department, clearly. Elections work. And these are all listed in that HEROES Act as essential work. And transportation work. On the right side of your screen, I just specifically said note. And it indicates any work, this is on the list of essential workers, any work performed by an employee of a state, locality, or tribal government that is determined to be essential work by the highest authority of such state, locality, or tribal government, which would imply the select board. Mm-hmm. So essentially, I read that as if the select board determines that a particular function in town that might not be listed as an essential, might not be as an essential work, the select board can essentially say, no, we believe that's essential work based on the tasks that they're performing. An example of that would be the library, for instance. And I'll go through that a little bit further in the presentation. Mm-hmm. So the qualifying requirements, according to the final rule, is there's a three-part framework for recipients seeking premium pay. First, you have to be an eligible worker. So even though all public employees are eligible workers, they're not necessarily entitled to premium pay. Second, the eligible worker must also perform essential work. And then finally, premium pay must respond to workers performing essential work during the public health crisis. Continued qualifying requirements must serve at or below 150% of the state's county average all occupation wage or salary. Based on the state website, the Department of Labor, Bureau of Labor Statistics, Federal Department of Labor, Bureau of Statistics, which cites the all occupation pay, the average all occupation pay is $70,010. And that's the latest. It's a 2020 number, and that's the latest information they have on that. Are not exempt from fair labor standards or overtime rules. And if workers do not meet these requirements, recipients must provide written justification of how needs met for premium pay. And the premium pay allows for up to $13 an hour, but not exceed $25,000 during this time frame. So our local proposal is this. When we met, we wanted to make this as palatable as possible and reasonable. And we wanted to make sure, obviously, we have to meet all federal requirements as an eligible worker performing essential work. And hours of premium pay must have been worked during the Massachusetts COVID-19 state of emergency from March 10th, 2020 to June 15th, 2021. The pay schedule is as follows. Police, fire, EMS, dispatch, $2 extra per hour worked in person, cannot exceed over $5,000 per person. All others meeting premium pay and eligible workers are $1.25 extra per hour worked in person and cannot exceed more than $3 per person, $3,000 per person, excuse me. To ensure a checks and balance protocol, it requires that department heads submit an attestation form to certify federal and local requirements are met for each employee intended to receive premium pay. The total ARPA funding contribution is as follows. As you can see, that is what has been submitted to me. That is on the higher end, because some of these essential workers may need, if approved, the written justification. So that is on the higher end of it. As you can see, the Medicare was something that we were tasked to try to figure out, would be an additional $3,948. And then workers' compensation, this is an estimate because it's too difficult to actually get an actual number. The town administrator, Ed Gibson, researched this, and it would be roughly $2,500. Any questions or concerns at this point before I explore some talking points?
Anyone?
Anything that needs clarification?
You'll probably get to it. I think the number of hours you'll talk about later on, or how you've come up with the number of hours listed on the chart here? Oh.
Sure, I can tell you how department heads did it through their timesheets, yes. And actually, that doesn't come up in the talking point, so I can discuss that now.
Yeah, just curious how you've come, I see the rates per hour, but how?
So the hours are you have to go back in your records. For instance, for the police department,
Yeah.
I went back in my records and I determined through my payroll records, whenever anybody was in person at the department, so it didn't include vacation, didn't include sick time, and worked during that time frame.
Okay.
And then however many hours that was, it was multiplied by the pay schedule.
Okay. And did that include overtime pay or not?
Every time, yes,
Yeah.
whenever they had to go into work.
So it would be overtime, police detail, any?
No details,
Not
no.
detail?
No
Okay.
details.
Not detail,
No details.
okay.
So whenever they had to report to work. So overtime would be a necessity. They'd have to report to work under overtime. So it would be an additional $2 an hour.
I have a question, Chris.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ian, the one that you have up there, the slide, you said that was on the high end, totaled 278,000?
Yes.
Or wages was 272, and then you added in the taxes and all that. But the one in our packet is 266.
Yes, so what I did was I reached out to the department heads and had them verify their numbers as well, again, but there's also some additional ones on here. For instance, the library. I believe in representing all the town employees that the library performed essential functions for the town, and I'll go through that in the talking points, where I think that the select board under their, I would submit that the select board under their authority could classify them as essential workers based on what they did do, based on the fact that our town has limited resources. And I'll discuss that a little bit further in the
Okay, because like the building inspector, on one it's 1941, and the other one it's
Yes.
1,400.
So
it's a $500 swing.
the answer to that is, when we initially had that chart that we gave you, that was back from probably early December. So before we put together this, I wanted to get all the departments, everyone except for the police department, the fire department, hasn't been validated. We had to use their old numbers because the fire chief just didn't have the opportunity to submit it on time. But
And with the, assuming this is going to move forward at some point for consideration at some point, all the backup that gets to these forms, the assertions, the certifications, the hours and that will be made available to the select board?
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
And was assessor's office intentionally eliminated or not?
No, they were not. Nope.
It's just because no one in the office,
Come on up to her.
sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, please answer, yes.
You probably could have answered.
This is why,
Oh.
Jen is a company.
Hi, Jennifer Day, Treasurer Collector. It's just because the employees in the assessor's office now didn't work through the dates of 3/10/2020 to 6/15/2021.
Janine Domina didn't? Janine Domina didn't?
I don't think so, did you?
Well, maybe somebody.
We can double check.
Just double check. I mean,
But,
if there's anyone,
Yeah,
if there's anyone, it would be possibly Janine that had
Yeah.
worked a couple months at least in that.
Should be
Yeah.
a couple of months.
Yeah,
okay, so we
Yeah.
can check that.
double check that one, please, so we're being sure that we're inclusive.
And I think one of the other points that you made, and maybe you're going to get to it in here, but as far as those that are eligible, at least the last time we talked, when the chair sent Joy and I over to meet with you guys, is that it was, one of the conditions was they had to be actively employed on the date passed by the select board.
On the
Right,
date
so
what?
these- That it's, if it's
So-
assuming it's approved by the select board, meaning anyone that's separated from us and has gone to work somewhere else would
It's
not be
not
getting a
retroactive
retro
then.
check.
The
Not
only
employees.
concern about that, and that is something that has been brought up within the working group, is that if this is classified as potential retro pay, they may have to be paid.
Was it retro pay or is it a stipend and premium? Because it's not pay. If it was pay, my understanding of the definition of pay in Mass is it would be subject to retirement. Is this subject to retirement?
No, it's not.
So I think it falls outside of pay.
At this point,
Those purposes.
the retirement board said that we got a specific response from the retirement board saying that it's not retirement eligible.
Okay.
So consequently, if that is in fact the case, then some of these numbers will actually go down, probably by about another 5,000.
And just, go ahead.
Oh, I was
Yes,
just
go
going
ahead,
to,
sorry.
and along with the detail, we'll have by department a breakdown of each employee and the
Every
amount that they
employee,
receive.
yes, that's how
Okay.
the attestation form is designed.
Okay.
Yes.
And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Who's, pick a department, any department.
Please, I can answer.
All right, police. Who signed the assertion for the police?
I do.
And similar to all the other departments?
Yes.
It's the individual department head that's certifying
Yes.
it all, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And how is this figured for folks that are contract or salary?
I can speak for the police department and on myself. I would require, for me to even qualify for this, it would have to require written justification through Ed or through the board. However, for my timesheets, I record I don't just record 40 hours, I record every hour I work.
So this is based on hours worked,
Hours worked,
even if it's salary or contract?
even if it's salary or contract, and hours worked in person, not remotely.
98% of our department heads are exempt employees.
Right.
So they fall out of the original piece.
Mm-hmm.
However, there is a clarification in there that says that with written justification, which will have to come from myself, that they would be eligible.
Based on the hours that they, it's unusual then, being exempt to exceed what would be like an overtime situation.
Let me, so going back to the slide here where it says they are not exempt from Fair Labor Standards Act and overtime rules. So for instance, that would require likely justification from me. My base pay, the mean average would be over 150%, because that's, with the addition of this, so that would be require justification as well. It's in there. We tried to keep it as a higher number to always go low from, so there was no surprises for anything that we were uncertain of.
And are we assuming that every department keeps timesheets?
Yes, well, Jen, could you answer this?
So every department keeps timesheets except for elected officials, so yes. And as far as the hours that go for the salaried employees, although they're salaried, they still do have a set amount of hours that they typically work. Like the town administrator typically works 80. The building, he's salaried. The building inspector typically works 64, so there are hours to use.
Just while Jen's at the mic. So those that are salary, with the exception, well, not the exception, because Ian already stated his position, But everyone else that's on salary, are they submitting some sort of document biweekly or weekly, whenever your payroll is, with a wet signature on it?
Yes.
Certifying that they did what they're saying they were supposed to do,
Yes, and they submit their hours, like how many hours they worked.
like the building inspector?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Excuse me, if I could just also elaborate on the school. The school department, they had the hybrid from, I believe, September 20 until the end of the pandemic. And I spoke directly with the school principal, who provided me that the hours are specific for those teachers and employees at the school that were in person teaching at the school during the particular cohorts that they were supposed to be teaching.
And they would also fall into, somebody would have to justify in writing to allow them, because they're all fixed pays. The teachers are, it's a fixed pay.
Right, so it's
over-
the hours, it would be the hours of the school day.
Meaning they only, they're exempt because of number two
Sure,
up there,
yes,
unless
exactly.
somebody issues a
Yes.
written reason to
Right.
justify it.
Right.
And is there any funding unique to the school relative to this particular program? And where does this leave us relative to Hampshire Regional?
It is only specific to monies towards Southampton employees, as far as what I'm representing, or that we're representing here. As far as any other funding sources for them, I'm not aware of any. I'm not saying that there isn't, but I'm just not aware of any. It wasn't brought to my attention.
Good question. I think with the CARES Act, there were separate funds, right? We had a major pot here, but I believe the school also had some level of CARES funding that they got directly from DESI or something, so it,
For premium pay?
Yeah,
No.
Under the town's version of CARES
Yeah.
was the school's version of ESSER.
okay, yeah. So there may be, I think that would be something we'd just want to double check, that there is no other possible funding
Just to
coming
use
for
that funding
Yeah.
as, okay, I
Right, yeah.
understand.
And I guess the question would be, given that we're part of a regional five-town thing, what's happening with other towns that might be part of it? Not talking Hampshire Regional per se, but other towns that have primary schools, like the Chesterfields, like the Williamsburg, any other towns, have they already done something with premium pay, or do you know of other towns that are starting to do something? with premium pay?
I don't know of any in particular local towns within, especially within our district, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's the case right now.
I've been trying to follow the news on ARPA spending, and as it appears in the Gazette or whatever, and I haven't seen a whole lot of activity just in general about premium pay yet. I mean, there's other things that have been spent, but I haven't seen
Yeah,
much
I'm not
about
aware
it.
of any of the 5 towns that are within the
So we
district.
may be ahead of this too, but, yeah, I guess my question would be, so suppose Southampton went ahead with this, what is that going to cause in terms of issues with other towns? I don't know. We can't control that. It's only our money for our town, obviously, but
That's
it
my feeling on it.
could be
but-
a little bit of a challenge there. Okay, other questions? Francine?
No, I was just, this gentleman here had his hand up.
I'd like to keep this with the select board, please, if I can do that for now.
Just had a comment. Sunderland and Pelham are two of my towns. I'm a reporter. They are looking at premium pay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Francine, did you have any questions?
No, I didn't.
Anybody? Okay, go ahead, Eden. Let's go ahead.
So this is just some talking points of why I think it's important. Southampton, based on some of its fiscal shortfalls, we know that there's been some pay that probably should be increased. And, I just submit to the board that this is an opportunity to not only recognize the hard work of the essential employees of the town, but also maybe support them in keeping the town's continuity operations in flow. We're a small town with very limited resources, and we're able to, although this is not over, we were able to get through this, and I believe that we did very well at it. And I just want to go through some talking points about some of the justifications. And speaking first about the first responders, I can say that clearly during that pandemic, the ambulance responses, the fire department responses, and the police responses to medical calls put people in jeopardy. And we have to remember that a lot of time while this was occurring, we were strapped for PPE. A lot of times we didn't have the proper PPE. There was a lot of information that we didn't know about the virus. And I really think that when we're responding to these calls, we did our best to keep the town safe, and I won't say sacrifice because I believe it's our job, but we did what we were tasked to do. And just to give you the police department and the EMS, we responded to a death investigation at one point. When they responded there, this person was deceased in his home. He died of COVID, and everyone in his family was infected. They did not know this for probably the first half hour of being in that home. These are the type of risks that they've encountered. Medical responses, clearly, the ambulance had an influx of medical responses, and you never know where this virus is breeding and at what stage it is. So, and again, the PPE at some point during this pandemic, especially the state of emergency, we didn't have the proper PPE. We were all looking for the N95 masks. The highway department, oh, excuse me. Down. So the highway department was crucial, obviously, to keep the roads cleared where there's any type of weather event. They also were involved in the trash disposal throughout the town and the landfills. So I'm trying to make the point of how essential these departments are. The water department clearly operate, maintain safe public drinking water infrastructure. That is essential. The building department, the inspectors had to go into homes and ensure safety for private and commercial buildings. And I also should note too, is that at some point, the police and fire were aware of homes, not names, but homes that had been infected. We could not share that with anybody, and no other town department. So you have people like the building department that were actually going into potential homes, and there could have been sick people in those homes. They had no notification of it. So again, it's just their exposure was real. The public health, that goes without saying. These essential workers conducted community-based public health functions, the surveillance for the virus, compiling, analyzing, communicating public health information. That again, these are all listed within the HEROES Act for essential work, so they qualify clearly. The Council on Aging, this is important because they maintain contact with seniors and assisted in making vaccine registration appointments for seniors. They ensured adequate food supply for seniors who needed assistance, and also ensured transportation van services for senior doctor's appointments. This is, this was also a very dark time and a lot of isolation. And I feel like if the Council on Aging might not meet the definition of an essential worker, in our town, I believe they did. I believe that they met that because they provided resources to the senior citizens that otherwise they would not have had. So I do believe them to be essential workers. I submit that to you. The treasurer collector, part of the definitions of essential work is handling papers and physical handling of items by coworkers and the public. The treasurer's office, not only do they provide continuity of operations and maintaining payroll for employees and vendors, they collected the collection of taxes and water payments and met with employees for processing new hire paperwork. So there was a constant interaction. The town clerk, she maintained an operational election process following all health protocols during the COVID-19. As you know, we had some outdoor meetings, which were very successful, and that's part of that success is from the town clerk's office. Again, that's a continuity of operations that we had to have. The town administrator, well, quite frankly, Ed maintained and administered continuity of operations of the town. He had administered meetings for various boards. I recall him being in this office during Zoom meetings, reporting to work and orchestrating all those Zoom meetings, process license, and also physically handle items by coworkers and the public, which is an element of essential work. The custodial staff, That goes without saying. Our custodial staff at the police department services other buildings. I know that directives were given specifically to clean during the heightened part of the pandemic, to clean high-frequency touch areas, and also cleaning cells where people were in. So obviously, that's an essential work as well. The school department, clearly listed in the HEROES Act for essential work. Some of the things I think that should be noted for the school department is they maintained an in-person education through hybrid teaching from September of 2021 during the pandemic. They had exposure to unvaccinated persons because they were children and couldn't get the vaccine. And a lot of these children are too young for vaccines, and they didn't have the ability or even self-discipline to wear masks properly. My wife's a fourth grade teacher. You know, the masks are constantly coming off their face. They're sneezing on her, and so there's exposure to the teachers and the staff there. And the library, and this is where I believe that discretionary authority that the board has, what I would submit to you is that the library provided, and this is something I had learned, and I'm glad it was brought to my attention. During the pandemic, the library didn't entirely shut down, and the library provided research and reading materials for all age demographics, to include children as well as seniors. They held curbside pickup when closed, and they caused for the SORA program, the SORA program. And this allowed for school children to access the CWMAR's online database system, while the school didn't have an active librarian. So that is where I believe they meet that essential function for the town. They also assisted those who lived alone and were isolated due to COVID-19, and they physically handled items by coworkers and the public. So at the curbside pickup, they would have to handle those books after they were handled by the public. And that's essentially what I have left. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns or...
Yeah, thank you. Francie?
Yeah, I just quickly, on the town clerk, does that include the election workers?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yes, it does.
And I was just going to add on the school department, does that include like the bus drivers?
No, because I think they're privately contracted.
Okay. All right, anybody? Questions, thoughts? Any just general comments?
Just when do you think we'll be able to have all the backup?
I could have it hopefully by, I know Chief Workman probably won't be in the office for, I think, another week, but I can have a backup, everything backed up for you folks. No later than 2 weeks for sure. I have most of it now anyway.
Good. I think it'll all tie in. As you know, we're finishing up the
Sure.
ARPA survey that basically closes today, and we'll spend the next 10 days or so trying to look at those results. And premium pay was a question on that
It was.
survey, and I'm assuming that it's going to come up
Yes.
relatively high on the survey in terms of people's thoughts about that, but we'll have that hopefully in a couple weeks too. So all of that together, and one of the other issues that we're going to talk about tonight is having an actual application form for the ARPA funds so that we can track them, we know where they're going, and if we have to make choices, between departments, given limited budgets, we know that we've made the best choice possible based on the justification rationale that's been provided. So we're going to be working on developing an actual application form for the various departments and/or committees to put in their request to use the ARPA funds. Then that will also help us, just track it a lot
Okay.
better. So all of that's kind of coming together, but this is a really good first iteration of what you're thinking about, and I think that's been very, very helpful. Anybody have any first thoughts or anything? No?
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity. And
No,
again,
thank you.
I wish this could have gotten out a little bit before the survey, because the survey might not provide the detailed information of
Right.
what all the
Yeah.
essential workers did
Sure,
for the town
yeah.
and
But I think this
to
has
maintain
been
its
very,
continuity.
very, very helpful. So thank you very much, Ian, and everybody who's worked to put this together.
Thank you.
I think we are all, in general, recognizing the hard work and effort that everybody put in to keep us going with our general operations as well as our overall health and well-being during the entire 14 months or so, during the quote-unquote emergency, not that it's over yet. But
Sure.
from the state point of view, it's no longer the emergency that it was. So thank you very much.
All right,
Ian.
thank you for the
Appreciate it.
time.
Thank you, Ian.
Good, thank you. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, any guests coming in, please sign in at the at the desk over there? Yeah. Our friend from the reporting needs to sign in. So with that, let's move on to quarterly quote-unquote reports. Oops.
Looks like Paul stepped out.
Paul stepped out for a minute.
He'll be right back, I just saw him on the...
Okay. He might not have been thinking we were ready here. Here he comes.
There he is.
Perfect timing. Perfect timing. Mr. Dement, you're up. So, thanks. So, doesn't seem like it was that long ago we saw you, but it was really October, but this'll be it for a while, so.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It does. So thank you for coming and giving us any updates on what's been happening at the planning board.
Well, there's not a lot to report since October. I got a handout here for you tonight, and I apologize for not emailing it, but just didn't get around to it.
Okay,
Show you what we're up to.
great, thank you.
Thank you.
Probably is familiar with this, but I'll give you a
Thank
copy
you.
anyway.
Thank you, Paul.
So we're continuing the bylaw revisions, and it's progressing pretty good. We've put a lot of time in with our new consultant, Richard Harris, who started in late September. And the reason it's progressing is because he's devoting more time to it, whereas our former consultant, Larry Smith, was on again, off again. He also went to Mexico for 3 or 4 months in the winter, which took us back a little bit. So now the continuity is progressing pretty good. So what I gave you is a copy of the existing bylaws. The first sheet is what we have now, as far as the chapters in the sections. And attached to that going forward is what we've been working on, and this is the revised, what our consultant calls recodification. It could be called recodification, but it's recoding the chapters and putting them in sub chapters as well going forward. And I've checked off the ones that we have covered. Some of them have been partially covered. Most of them have been completed in its entirety. So as you see from the old to the new, that this is going to break it down more easily for all the departments that have to use them, building department especially, probably Ryan Gielaher at Zoning Board. But the average layperson that's, calls and say, well, what can I do here? What can I do there? In the current format, you have to pretty much, you're on your own trying to delve through that information. When you start to break down sections that are pertinent to what someone is looking to accomplish, then you can get there quicker, and then the process goes a little bit more smoothly.
Sure.
And in addition to the revision, it's also the formatting is different, as you can see. He's aligning the format so it's going to be easier to follow the type font that we chose and whatever else as it goes forward. Some of them that you see that might be in gray with a line drawn through them, our consultant has suggested moving them, some of them to our policies and procedures, and other ones in different sections where they might be more pertinent, because there's a lot of them that are jumbled in together with sections that he does not feel is necessary, and makes it more confusing. The most extensive one that personally I foresee, I think Joy might agree, is the inclusionary zoning, which is going to take quite a bit of work, which is also includes the affordable housing component. And after discussions with a joint meeting we had with zoning and the housing board people, they want to further study multi-family dwellings, accessory apartments, probably in some districts, zoning districts, reducing lot sizes so you can put in condominiums or duplexes or condex, such as those that might make on a smaller parcel of land something more affordable. So that's going to take a lot more research. And luckily, and I just was notified today, Pioneer Valley Planning has awarded us a $5,000 DLTA grant for the application we submitted for rewriting the inclusionary and the affordable housing bylaw.
Great.
And that's going to be helpful because I think we were quoted by our consultant because how in-depth that is, that could cost anywhere up to maybe $8,000 to $10,000. So to defray that cost is going to be a big help.
Great.
I'd like it to be 10, but I'll take what I can get. So that's where we're at, and you can probably absorb this more as you go along, and I invite you, if you have any questions about some of the areas we haven't covered, to give us your input. I don't know at this point yet how the entire package is going to be submitted, but I can tell you that this recodification, the definitions, the table of use regulations, and some of the material will be coming forth at the next town meeting in May, because we have a public hearing scheduled for, I believe it's March 31st, so we can address the items that our consultant is suggesting we can go forward with now. So stay tuned for that. And we'll have more information as the public hearing gets closer. As for our budget, I did submit a request for $15,000 for the next fiscal year. I probably should have shot higher. I don't know what the budget process is about because I've never had to request money. And my sense told me to ask for probably twice or three times as much, and maybe I'd get what I really wanted. But hopefully the people involved will, and I'll be happy to speak to them, know how important it is to get this work done, because we've been working on it now for probably about parts of 5 years.
Right.
Let's see. I don't really have any long-term issues that have changed from the last time. I still believe we may need down the road with the town maybe consider a junior or senior planner, but I won't rehash that again. That's
And you didn't put that in your budget, obviously.
no.
Okay.
No. And housing, working with housing, they have some funds. We were told that CPC can't help us with any of that rewriting of it. It would have been nice to get some money from them. Even though the CPC funds can be used toward affordable housing, probably purchasing of land or in some degree of construction, but they can't give money toward the study of it. So.
You mean the creation of bylaws? Do you mean the creation of bylaws that focus on housing?
Right. So that was kind of disappointing, and housing has got some money, but how much they want to use toward that hasn't been determined either, and I think Gymsini is going to be here tonight.
Yes, he is.
Probably he can speak on that behalf, but between Jim and the planning board, and now with the PVC being involved, PVPC again, we'll try to keep forging forward. And I think what came out of the the last joint meeting was try to do changes that you can do in short order. The inclusionary bylaw is that many of you may or may not know, it's very convoluted and it's very complex. And that might take a long time to try to figure something out, to put a component in when somebody builds a subdivision to put a certain percentage toward affordable housing. The more quicker response we might get is by alleviating some of the zoning restrictions where multifamily housing and accessory apartments, as I mentioned before, do things that we can achieve relatively quickly.
Short term.
In short term. And focus on that because the inclusionary could take a while. So other than that, I don't have much to add. There hasn't been a lot of activity with building or subdivisions, or it's been very, very quiet, as you might expect, the last year and a half. So that's pretty much what we've been focusing on as bylaws.
Great. Anybody have questions?
I do.
Yep.
So I just want to thank you, Chair, for coming and presenting, and congratulations on the PVPC grant
you.
award. That's awesome. And I just want to say I've been very impressed with the consultant. He's been very thorough, very professional. He's very knowledgeable. So I think that's been a great addition to the planning board's goal of redoing the bylaws. I just want to state that I have had some observations in regards to the planning board. I understand that I've seen that you've been acting as chair, as the treasurer, and as the recording secretary. So I was just wondering if in the future you've thought about delegating some of those duties to the rest of the planning board?
Actually, as I think I alluded to you, it was, I asked back months ago, probably in September, October, if anybody would be interested in taking on that. And Dan LaValle did come forward. Somehow it got lost in the shuffle and with meetings canceled or moving on. It just, he never kept pressing me about it, and it just slipped. So I had been doing them, and then I spoke to Dan on it the last couple of weeks, and he said he would give it a shot. So
Great.
you're right. I'm
Definitely need
doing both, but he
separation of duties,
he is on the books as being the recording secretary.
It's just a lot of work. So, and there's 4 other members of the board, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, there's not a lot, as I said, these days, there's not a lot of minutes to take, so, and we don't take minutes verbatim when it comes to zoning bylaws, because we wouldn't have enough paper to write it on or print it on there.
Yeah. Francine, anything? Yes, we know.
I have a question.
Well, yeah, go ahead.
Where's the line, I mean, the bylaws committee's been working hard on bylaws, read along. Where's the line between the planning board bylaws? You know, we were looking at one tonight, actually, about dogs. And I see on here, it covers chicken bylaw, domesticated farm animals. So where's that line between what planning board jurisdiction and also our bylaws committee? And also, do all the bylaws that this consultant is recoding, all of them going to be submitted to our attorney?
Yeah.
And that'll be obviously a good amount of money, and that will happen before the town meeting. And will this be presented in its entirety to the public?
For what he has ready, it will be presented, and when the public hearing is published, then it will be online at the town clerk's office and in print, both. And you're right, and Ed can confirm this. I believe anything that comes through a zoning bylaw change like that does get scrutiny by the town attorneys.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And an extensive package like this may even want to suggest that even in draft form, that we send that along for review to town council so they can start on it, because if it didn't go until after March 30th, it's probably not going to be reviewed in time to be added to the warrant for the May, and I forget what the date is, 3rd, 2nd annual town meeting.
Concerned about also what the budget is for our attorney. We've been sort of passing along bylaws to them after they're approved here, and we've been doing it based on up to X amount of dollars because of the amount it costs.
You know, I think Joy will agree with me that Richard Harris's experience in the knowledge he bears and the typographical errors and the omissions and corrections that he's made are very, you know, I'm impressed with what he's doing. And I can't foresee that the legal people, they'll probably be charged more for reading it line by line than they will for actually making suggestions, because I can't believe that there'd be a lot of issues with what he's come forward with, because he's worked for the town of South Hadley, and he's done this for a living for so long. So hopefully it won't be too costly.
Just following up on what Rini mentioned here, at the bottom of page 2 of what you handed out, you've got a list of A through whatever there. And so are those ones that you're going to be working on? Are those actual bylaws or?
Yeah, well, we've got marijuana
Right.
already on the books. He just wants to review it. Solar access, we covered solar already. Access, I'm not sure what that's going to entail. I'm a little bit confused myself about College Highway, Pomeroy Meadow to Gun Road, whether that's got something to do with the village or the Midtown Business District. But you're right, some of the other things, and like Maureen was asking, I have no idea where where we pick up sometimes the planning board and general bylaws exist, but there had been issues with chickens for years in this town.
Oh, yes.
And now we're going to try to, in fact, we addressed some of it in the table of use contents, speaking about how many chickens in certain districts you can have, and
Yeah.
if roosters were exempt, I don't know.
Per the zoning regulations probably, but, so 2 questions for me, I guess. So with the PVPC grant you're getting, are they going to provide a consultant to help you do the rewrite of the inclusionary, or is Richard Harris going to do that?
No, Ken Comia from PVPC, who also worked on the last DLTA,
Sure,
he's going to be the point person for that,
okay.
and he'll work with us on that. No, Richard, I won't be having Richard working on it and Ken.
Right.
Ken will submit it, and I'm,
Yeah.
because I don't want to double pay for the thing either.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that in terms of, you mentioned your budget here, that the amount of money that you have available, is that only from the town budget, what you're able to pay for your consultant, or do you have you've got revolving?
Right
funds?
now, I've got revolving funds that are slowly going down because we haven't had a budget.
Right.
We've worked off of a pot that we accrued over the years with subdivisions, marijuana, and whatever else. So now it's going down.
Okay,
And it's also time to request money because I'm not going to have enough to cover it going forward. Because,
Okay.
Who knows if there's going to be a subdivision or something big
coming up.
coming forward. There's no way to tell.
Okay. And then the last question, I just want to be sure that we're not everybody's I want to be sure everybody's on the same page. There is this codification system that we've invested in for the bylaws in general, this E-Code 360, and it was my understanding that the zoning the zoning bylaws at least are going to be fed into that. So I don't know if these bylaws are part of that or not.
Once they're formalized?
Yeah,
Oh, I would hope so.
yeah. I mean, because it's supposed to be a searchable system, I think,
Right.
and
It is.
everything. And so I think,
Yeah.
I'm hoping that everything gets included. We might
Yeah, you
need
would
to
have-
check with Lucy on that, just to be sure.
Just
but-
like you currently do, only they're not electronically, you'd have general bylaws and zoning bylaws.
Right, yeah. So just to be sure that, but some of those, yeah.
And the outline for the zoning bylaws was already approved.
Was it?
I'm not
Okay.
sure if you were included in that, but I know the zoning board I believe, approved the outline proposed by the company itself, so that we're sure that we're getting,
Okay.
it's being set up the way it makes sense for our users.
Okay, all right. Well, just to be sure, just to know that that's happening, so that, once we get down the road
Yes.
on that, they're still looking at the current bylaws, I think, in terms of the general bylaws, to figure out how they're going to, rearrange them, if you will. I mean, they're going to do this same kind of thing, of breaking them into sections, so
Right.
they're easy to identify, and,
Right.
user-friendly and searchable and so forth. So, but Lucy can have more information for you on that.
All right.
If you need to catch that. So, good, all right. Okay, if nothing else, thank you, Paul, for coming in. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you all for your service.
Okay,
Thank you, Paul.
all right.
Can I just ask Ed, this is, I think, the first time we said we don't need to get the revenue and expense report,
Yeah.
but I'm curious to know where we stand right now on the legal line.
I would have to go take a look.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe you can let us know if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Because I think, if nothing has gone in front of our attorney, and you're suggesting even some drafts get over there?
Oh, yeah, I'm thinking at least as a timeline that might
Right.
have to start with the drafts to get them done in time.
Yeah, timing is
Yeah,
going to be
I
tight
think
on
the
this.
timing is going to be tight.
Correct,
Right.
yeah. So, okay, thanks. All right, next up, Zoning Board of Appeals, Ryan Gillahart. Ryan, welcome.
Good evening, Ryan Gillahart, Zoning Board of Appeals. It's going to be kind of redundant with what Paul's gone through. I mean, because our last meeting was late August, September. It's same thing. It's been very quiet the last year. We've only had a couple, I think 3 hearings. I've been working with Paul all along on the zoning bylaws with Larry and with the new consultant, which I think has been ongoing for 2 to 3 years. I see the light at the end of the tunnel because we've made definitely in the last couple meetings in the last couple months, excuse me, some good headway. So I'm feeling fairly confident that we can get it through and get it into the town meeting for the vote. It's definitely long overdue and something that needs to be addressed, which hopefully, I mean, it's a work in progress, and there are things that are going to be addressed, and it's not something you can take on the whole thing in one shot
Right.
and get it through. Budget concerns, I don't think we really we kind of operate on our own. I mean, I'll take any money that we could get for clerical support is kind of the only staffing thing that we always seem to struggle with, because it's very minimal and it's only when needed. That would definitely help out, because one of the members has been doing it for about the last year and a half, and it's quite a bit. And we do take in enough money to cover the cost of a salary on that as well. So I know I can circle back with Ed and make sure that that position gets posted to see if there's any interest. Same thing kind of over the next 4 to 6 months. We're just finishing up these bylaws with the planning board and trying to get this through. We don't have anything, any major plans. We only meet when we have meetings, and knock on wood, right now I haven't had any requests for anyone coming in for any variances or special permits. That's pretty much all that I have.
Okay.
Ryan, I wonder if you could just kind of walk us through, I mean, for the people at home too, on the process that the Zoning Board of Appeals goes through. So you would get requests such as what, and then you would schedule a meeting to address it, and what guidance would you use to determine whether to grant an appeal or not?
So special permit or variance, the process is the applicant will fill out the appropriate paperwork, get it in, we'll schedule a hearing. And it's based off the hardship, if it's topography, the location, and a lot of the things that we've gotten over the past is side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, typically accessory garages, additions, height variation, like people come in for a cupola because it exceeds the max height. And like an example of one of the things in the working with the planning board on redoing these bylaws is that accessory building has a maximum height of, is it 20 feet? Thanks, Ron. So it's 20 feet, and the max height of a principal structure is 30? 35. So a lot of times people come in, want to build an accessory garage or building, and they can't match the roof line. And I think we all know if you're not matching the roof line, it definitely aesthetically it's not very pleasing. Or their garage is at the max of a 20 and they decide to put a cupola or something. They come in for 2 feet, a foot, 3 feet, something like that. So that's like one of the items we work with planning board, because as we went through the items, Paul would ask on me, what have you run into on certain things? And that is like one of the ones who were able to like restructure that. And it kind of catches up with the times. I think what it was back when these were written, they were trying to control, obviously, so everything didn't look out of scale. Well, now the houses are a little bit larger, garages are bigger, vehicles are bigger, everything. So that's like an example of one of the things that that comes through. I'd say the last 10 has been, the setbacks. We had to deal with the chickens years back, but that's well behind us. So it's pretty much side and front yard setbacks.
So even if we don't have some of the bylaws in place, you've got to, nonetheless, I assume you've got to abide by Mass General Law, right? So a lot
Right.
of this is controlled already by Mass
Right.
General Law, and we're just trying to make it more specific to Southampton with these bylaws, yeah.
Right, because I mean, think of it driving down the road and you have 8 houses in a row and they all have an accessory garage, and just it's aesthetic, the roof line of things that don't match. It looks worse for that 10-foot separation, or possibly, not that the house is a max at a 35, but let's say the house is 26. It just doesn't jive. And then if they go to connect that at some point, in the construction side, it doesn't work. It's not fit for the times. I mean, the bylaws have to change with the times and the direction of where everything's going. And I think when were these last touched, in the 70s?
Really? Well,
So, 40
Might be time.
to 50 years on some of them.
What's the current setback amount?
Man, I'm getting drilled. 30 feet setback, side yard is,
10 feet for an accessory,
yep.
10?
10 feet for an accessory structure. A house has to be more than 10, but accessories.
any other questions? Anybody?
I have a question. I just want to say also thank you for all the work that you've been doing with the bylaws and the planning board. You've showed up to pretty much every meeting, and put in some good input. So it's very knowledgeable, and I appreciate it as a layperson. I was just wondering, does the planning board record their meetings in any way, minutes, or is it on Easthampton Media at all?
Or zoning board, you mean?
ZBA?
ZBA.
ZBA.
Yeah. Sorry, did I not say the zoning board? I meant zoning board.
One of the members, either one of the members does the minutes, and so you're asking me where they're put and where they're able to be read?
Yeah.
It's a good question, because they take care of it, and I think Nilda, I thought she got him into Lucy, but I'd have to follow. That's one thing I steer clear of. I don't get involved in that, but I can find out exactly where they are, because I know they're not on the website.
Yeah, there isn't minutes since 2015 on there, so I'm just wondering.
Right. We have the minutes, right, so they're in the cloud. So,
Okay, thank you.
It'd be great if they can get up there, though.
Yeah,
okay.
people would have a better understanding of what ZBA does if they were there. Okay, no other questions? All right, thanks, Ron.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Okay. Next up, Gymsini Housing Authority.
Good evening.
Evening.
Okay, looks like you folks have a copy of my report.
We do. So you can kind of summarize if you want
Yeah,
to.
great. I guess in summary, our long-term goals haven't changed in a quarter. They're pretty much, I think we're sticking to the course. I think what I'd like to emphasize here, a few things. One, we've been very fortunate, and I take zero credit for any of this, but a lot of hard work's been done. We've attained some additional grants, which are exciting to help us continue on our effort to create a housing trust. Paul was just telling me about another grant that's come through that he mentioned. So there's real energy, I feel, toward getting closer and closer to where the feedback we got both from the master plan and also from the survey, where the citizens are hoping that we gain in the town as far as more pricing points for housing for folks in town, and some more capital A affordable units in town also. So that's exciting. That's one. Two, I remain very concerned about the membership on our board. We are a board of, supposed to be a board of 5, and we remain a board of 3, which is very tenuous because that's just enough for a quorum. So we all have to attend, and somebody's sick or whatnot, our business is going to stop. Somebody leaves the board, our business is going to stop. We've been really, working hard to gain new members, but so far have not been successful. We did have one person express interest, attended a meeting, and then was no longer interested. We weren't mean or nasty to this person. It's just the work it's arduous. I'm very, very pleased with the 2 members, and Janet and Sierra, with their dedication is just, it's tremendous. And Joy has been a great supporter, attending all our meetings and representing the select board here, and really helping us focus on the housing trust. That's going to be the next big lift. That's really by design, not the purview of the housing authority, the housing trust. It's more the select board, but we being capital We Housing Authority are not of the mind of we want to help. We want to collaborate to make it happen, and I think the grant will help.
Yeah. Do you want to describe the grant a little bit? That just came through, right? Within the last
It did
day or
just
two?
come through. I know this much, and Joy, feel free to jump
I
in and
know a little bit more, but maybe
Yeah,
not.
okay, so, we have a good, we seem to have a good partnership with PVPC. When we put the grants out and it's awarded, it's often works with them. Ken Comia, who many of you know, helped us a lot with our survey and pulling information from the town residents. Now he's helping us with our housing production plan. I didn't mention that, but that's a big piece. We're coming toward the end of that, creating a housing production plan, which is necessary. And the second key piece of that is the housing trust. So Ken will also, he's pretty much committed to, I can help you with that too. So there's a continuity with these grants that, frankly, when I look at, my limited knowledge of how, you get supports from grants, I didn't expect that kind of personnel and personal continuity
It's a
to
technical
weave through
assistance.
this. Yeah, the technical
It's not funding,
assistance.
it's technical assistance.
Yeah, thank you. Ken's been a real asset, and having that consistency, it's always Ken.
So this grant, though, that you're talking about for the Housing Trust came through MHP, though, right? It didn't come through?
Yeah, there's 2
Building
different
Partnership.
trusts. Yeah, the one with Ken is through PVPC, and that's going to be exclusively for the revising the inclusionary bylaw.
Right.
And then the grant through MHP is, I think it's 8 months of an intensive work with the town to create a housing trust.
Okay,
Thank you. My error,
okay,
it's easy to confuse all these
Okay,
multiple
it's
sources.
brand new news.
yeah.
Right.
Great, okay, yeah, that's good, okay, yeah. So
So-
the housing production plan is coming to an end, and there'll be like a public hearing or something about that, or? what
Well,
will happen with
it will produce a document that will be used as we move forward as a housing authority in conjunction with the housing trust.
that? Will there be an opportunity, though, for citizens to
I
comment on
certainly
the
hope so.
housing plan?
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
yes.
All right, in a draft form of some sort, okay.
I think the important thing for people out there to understand about this, because I think it's a lot of abbreviations, the idea of protection plan is that right now, you know what the market is for housing. It's literally impossible for someone who's looking for an affordable house to get the financing and the approval and all that sort of thing. So this establishes a trust so that it allows sort of a, somewhat of a, not really, I don't want to use the wrong word, but not a pre-approval, but it basically positions people in a better place to be able to be competitive in purchasing.
And in my mind, specifically what the Housing Trust does is it positions the town to be in a place
Yeah.
to purchase. Because in the past, what has happened, even in a less competitive market than it is now, is members of the Housing Authority, my understanding, before my time, would see a piece of property for sale in town. They might say, oh, that could be something that we could create affordable housing on, or it might be a single unit that could be made to be affordable. But by the time they went through the gyrations of trying to obtain funds, the house was sold.
Yeah.
It's because they didn't have, the town, the trust allows the purchases like that to take place without it being under the jurisdiction of the town and responsibility of the town. It's a separate trust, hence the name. So it gives that kind of flexibility to make those purchases that we do not have presently.
Right.
I also believe a housing trust can take donations,
Oh,
I
yeah,
think,
okay.
yes.
monetary or
Mhm.
in-kind
Uh-huh, okay.
donations, yes.
Okay,
Right.
all right.
And thank you for that prompt. It didn't make my report, but it makes me think. We also had, I was kindly invited to present to Open Space Committee, and there's some interest there, some understandable, I think, on the part of the OSC reservations. They want to know the details, but what I basically presented to the Open Space Committee is that we would love to collaborate with them as the Housing Authority as they receive future donations of land in town for open space, that they consider maybe partitioning a small piece of that maybe has some frontage to a street for donation for affordable housing. And I'm not smart enough to come up with that idea myself. I just was lucky enough to attend, many of you who attended the training that Kestrel Land Trust put on at the Congregational Church a few years back. And that's something that really impressed me, was how they often work that in with the donors who wanted to keep a piece either for the family farm to stay in the family farm, or have a couple pieces of land that were for their next generation to be reserved, or even to do what I'm suggesting, which is to have some pieces set aside for affordable housing. So I just wanted to open that door with open space, because I think there's possibilities there. You never know until you consider it. And so I'm going to ask that the select board be mindful of that as they hear from open space also, and hopefully reinforce that as something that's a good collaboration that can produce both the open space that townspeople want, but also offer some opportunity for affordable housing that will not compromise
Yeah.
the open space piece.
Very good. Yeah. I just have one question, if anybody else, you mentioned difficulties with membership, and I believe you've got one slot open for a state position, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and then you still have one other open spot here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Housing Authority a 5-year board?
Yeah.
Which most others are 3-year, and why is that?
State
by
statute.
statute?
State statute.
Statute? Okay. I mean, I think that's a challenge too, when
Yeah.
you want to get volunteers and people, 3 years can be a commitment that, people can, maybe okay with, but 5 years sounds a little bit scary for a lot of people, I think, and that's a
I know,
hard
it scares me every night when I try to go to sleep. It's like, I'm on this for 5 years. So yes.
Yeah, no, good
Yeah.
point. Okay, now I was just curious why that was. I wasn't sure if that was something else. Okay, anything? Anybody? No?
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks. Well, good
Right.
luck with working with Planning Board. That's great to see that level of collaboration too on the bylaws, and certainly working with PVPC on your housing production plan. I think that's great to get that together, and I think you mentioned in your report about kind of trying to tie everything together. I mean, we've got the master plan, we've got the open space plan, they should all sync in terms of, what we're talking about. They shouldn't be just, standalone entities that, have to go off and do something. It really should be a combined effort. So I think that's great that you're all starting to work together on those bylaws and things like that, and having that dialogue is great.
It's work, but you're right. It makes sense that they all have the same, underlying purpose. Yeah.
This should be a central theme, I would think, running through them. So, yeah.
And had Jim mentioned their new MHP grant that they just recently
He did
received?
mention that,
Okay.
yes.
Well,
yeah.
actually, Joy brought it up and
Yeah,
reminded me, because I had him confused. But,
Yeah.
when Paul he was just whispering in my ear, and I,
Yeah.
is that the one? I get him confused. There's,
Yeah, that was the PPC one, right?
Yeah.
So, good. All right. Thank you, Jim. We appreciate your coming.
all right.
All right.
Thank you, folks, for what you do. Appreciate it.
All right, Jim, thank you.
Chris, I just want to mention, Ed was nice enough to go get the current expense
There's some
report.
extra copies there, too.
Oh, okay, I'll pass them along. But anyway, our legal line is 21,000, and it's about 55% spent as of December, the end of December. Did you get one? Huh? Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Ed.
next up, Building Inspector, Ron Lauren, please.
Thank you.
Hi, how are you?
Ron, how are you?
How you doing?
So, Ron Lauren, the building inspector. Last month I was here as a tree warden, so,
I thought we saw you recently.
yeah, exactly. That's a one-year term too, so it's not 5, so. So I just, basically, I kind of I tried to follow the format here with my report. Started out with current activities. Basically, what I have an outline of as my daily activities as the building inspector in town. They include processing building permit applications, of course, doing plan reviews for when these applications come in, conducting different investigations related to zoning violations. Also involves answering a lot of, zoning and building code related questions that come in probably daily. And then we also do a lot of clerical work in the office, meaning scanning. We're scanning everything in at this point, so trying to get everything on the cloud. I know you guys know Art. He does a lot of that stuff behind the scenes, so.
Are you using that large scanner?
Yes, yeah. Art's actually probably, at least an hour a day. He's down in the basement scanning the plans, so.
Great.
I know they're in the cloud. I can't tell you exactly where in the cloud, but I'm sure Art could certainly expand on that through email or whatever, so. We're also keeping paper copies too, so it's just going to make it more, it's going to be easier to access it, I guess.
Right.
And should be good. Our year basically runs a calendar year, so January 1st was the beginning of the new year as far as building permits are concerned. So from January 1st till now, I've issued 30 building permits. Let's see, we've issued 2 certificate of occupancies so far for new houses. So certificate of occupancy means basically we've closed out that permit and people have moved in. So actually in the last week, I think, last week I've issued 2 COs, so, for completed houses. Currently, right now, we have 11 houses under construction in Southampton at various stages. So, that's a fair amount. We also do what's called 304, 110 inspections. We do those on an annual basis. That's me and the fire chief conduct these inspections before the like liquor licenses, for example. We do those first. So we're current on that. So that's basically like a day-to-day activities. And then I moved down to a budget and spending. Our department continues to remain within budget, with the exception of the plumbing inspectors continuing ed this year, because what happened with the plumbing inspector and the state board, they weren't able to do continuing ed during the pandemic. So because of that, now Boston, that's who regulates the plumbing inspectors, is saying, okay, you guys have to double up on your continuing ed. So we didn't have a choice in that, unfortunately, and Tommy Sears, our plumbing inspector, did go, he's gone over budget on that. But I think there's ways, there's other areas that will stay under budget, so I don't think it's going to be a drastic issue. Let's see, last year was a busy year as far as building permits were concerned. And when I say last year, I mean 2020 to 21. I issued 304 building permits. That's an increase from 2019 to 2020. There was 275 permits issued, so there's a pretty good increase based on those 2 years. Good uptick. Also, 21 to 22, I issued 20 certificate of occupancies for new houses in town, which is pretty good in comparison to the years prior. So I did 20 last year, and then 20 to 21 was 15 new houses were issued, 15 the following before that, and then 2017 to 18, only 12 houses were built. So we're seeing a fair amount of new houses going up in town. I mean, we have a couple new subdivisions, so I mean, obviously that creates increased production. So I guess I can say a lot of that was due to the fact that there was the subdivision on Pequot Road, which is now pretty much, it's filled up, the first one. Then there's a second subdivision on Pequot Road, which is empty. However, that one there is going to get going because one of the builders in town, I guess he's bought 2 lots, and I think he's committed to more. So you're going to see that subdivision get filled up as well. Let's see. In addition to the 304 permits last year, we issued 11 sheet metal permits, which we also regulate through the building department, and 3 sign permits. And then the electrical inspector issued 162 permits, so he's very active as well. And unfortunately, I couldn't get a breakdown of Tommy Sears's, the plumbing inspector, but I know he's been equally as busy, so. Next 4 to 6 months, I guess from what I'm being told, we're getting a new phone system, which is going to be awesome. I guess that's going to be one thing that we're going to focus on, kind of deploying the new phone system, and it'll be good for everybody because we'll be able to transfer calls back and forth, and I think it's going to be better for everybody that calls in. And then I move on to suggested tools resource. Let's see, increased integration of online permitting. I don't know, I assume you guys are aware of the fact that we're online as far as permits go. In the last 4 or 5 months, we also we moved forward with the ability to take online payments. So now the whole process is basically handled online, and it's the people that are pulling permits, the builders and homeowners for that matter, they seem to really like it. I mean, it's very efficient. They don't have to come in. They can fill out the permits online, process the payments, and they can also attach documents, whether it's building plans or whatever else they have to attach. So,
Great.
yeah, it's definitely,
I think some other, the dog ones are now, so I think some of the departments are moving that direction.
Yeah, exactly. The dog licenses and some of the other stuff as well. I mean, eventually, it would be nice. Well, I came from Westfield. Before I was here, I was the building inspector in Westfield. And in Westfield, they have, it's a system called Munis. I don't think Southampton's big enough for something like that. But at some point, it would be nice to have a software that kind of pulls everybody in the town hall together. So, the Board of Health can weigh in on permits, or the assessors can weigh in, or the treasurer can weigh in. So it would be nice at some point to be able to have one standard software package for everybody. I know there's some out there. I know Amherst has a system that they're using right now that I've talked to a few people, and they really like it. And that's a system that, not only does it include the building department, Board of Health, if you're doing a perk test or whatever, you can fill out online, and then everybody just kind of, everybody speaks the same language, basically,
Right.
so.
What do you do now? Like, how does the assessor's office know that someone added a garage or added a porch or whatever?
It's all handled right now in Southampton through what's called a sign-off sheet. So this is the sign-off sheet that everybody has to use when they pull a building permit, and it's kind of an inefficient system, especially for like the builders and stuff. They have to go to the different departments and get signatures, which can be a real pain for, finding everybody. So, I mean, if we could, at some point get this here on to one sort of software, and then when the permit gets entered in, now all the different departments can just weigh in on it before the permit gets issued versus, the applicant walking around with this. I mean, it's.
Well, that's, if I can interject, I think this is the time to suggest something like that. We've got the Cost Efficiencies Committee that's,
Right.
Meeting, and,
Yep.
Through your cluster rep, I mean, suggest something like that, bring up, some specific names and things that we can
Yeah.
check out, because I think we're looking at, ways to reduce spending and improve efficiency, and, Lord knows there's many things that we do in town hall that we put
Yeah.
our hands on many times to get it done, and I think the less we can,
Yeah.
the more we can make that more automatic, I think would be a
Yeah.
great idea. So if
Yeah,
you've got some ideas, share them, yeah.
I think he already has. We discussed that idea at the last meeting.
There was one that came up, but I didn't know if there was
Yeah.
more than what he was
Yeah.
talking about,
Yeah, well, the group I'm part of, Janet Kane is the, she's the, the person in charge of our group, and I think that.
He did bring it forward.
Yeah, she must have, because I had a conversation with her about that, so. I mean, the other beauty of that is, well, right now, before we issue a building permit, for example, the treasurer's office they review the application, and if there's, if the property is not current on water bill or whatever, then the permit can't be issued until that's taken care of. So, I mean, if we had software in place, it might pick up more of that, so.
Yeah.
And like you said, if the money is available, I mean, it might be worth looking into, because, I mean, the unfortunate thing with this software, like the building department, for example, it's great software, it's really, everybody loves having it. Unfortunately, we've invested a lot of money into deploying this software. Maybe it should have been thought out a little bit more, where everybody could have kind of weighed into one specific software instead of, maybe the town, the town clerk's going to have one software, I got one software, eventually, you know what I mean? So if we could just have one,
Yeah,
and I keep saying Munis, but that's kind of what,
Yeah.
And I think are you familiar with Munis?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
That's that.
Ron, how do people know whether they need to pull a permit for something?
You mean a builder would know, of course, because they have to know
But I mean,
that.
average homeowners, because certainly I've heard a number of times here and there that, they didn't know they had to do a permit for
Yeah.
something that small. Where's the guidance around what requires a permit?
The guidance is in my code book. Unfortunately, people don't read the code books because it's not that exciting for people.
Yeah.
There's some stuff online. It could probably be a little bit more descriptive. We could add something like that to the website. What requires a building permit, what doesn't require a building permit. Generally speaking, if it's non-structural, obviously painting a house wouldn't require a building permit. When I say structural, I mean moving a wall or something. That requires a building permit. Sheds, if it's under 200 square feet, it doesn't require a building permit. The
Which,
fences.
as long as you brought that up, is fine. It's
Yeah.
consistent with other communities and whatever. The one issue with having an exemption for a shed under a certain size not needing a building permit is those smaller sheds are frequently the ones that you will find that violate the setback rules or end up on somebody else's property.
Yeah.
Right.
And I'm just hearing from just being a liaison to the assessors that, you know, there are people that are writing in, asking for an abatement, and, oh, we didn't know you finished off your cellar, we didn't know that you added a
Right.
shed.
Yeah.
And so how do people know what requires it? I'm not saying anybody's doing it unintentionally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that there might be some question if, you know, does this qualify or not?
I mean, what I find is a lot of people actually err on the, use caution as far as calling, you know, the office and saying, do we need a permit for this? You know, so I do see a lot of people that actually do want to pull permits, but then again, there's a fair amount that don't. How can people know that they need to pull a permit? Again, I think putting something on a website would be very helpful, I guess. I don't know really any other way of getting the message out there.
Okay.
The thing is, like, you know, as far as finishing a basement without a permit, I mean, people, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer. They should know that they need a building permit for that, but a lot of times people just don't want to pull building permits.
Right.
I think one of the things we're aiming toward, too, just talking about the website, is an updating and improvement of our website. And I think once we get to that point, too, what we're hoping to do, I think, is to have the ability for the town department heads to manage their own page.
Sure,
So that you
yeah.
can be putting up what you find is relevant, or something changes, you've got the
Right.
ability to
Yeah.
make that change. So we're working toward that. That's an
Right.
idea that we're hoping to,
Yeah, and then
get
have a
really underway.
consistent look with every department will have like a consistent
Yeah.
look, and, you know, as
Yeah,
far as
so-
being able to update, that would be great.
right?
Let's see, what else do I have?
Okay.
So yeah, streamlining the permitting process by creating more of an efficient way of the sign-offs was one thing that I thought would be worth looking into.
Yep.
Increased integration of online permitting with other departments. And besides that,
Like it?
I mean, I have the budget and stuff, but it's really hard to read. I could tell you
Yeah.
where the, you know, the revenue numbers this year versus last year. Quite a difference, actually. I think 2020 budget, we brought in 106,000, and the year, basically my full year, I brought in 137,000, so that's a big jump. And then my operating budget actually went down quite a bit too, so. Say I hit my numbers if it was a corporate environment, but this is it, so.
Good. All right, good. Well, and you'll have a chance to go and present your budget to the FinCom whenever
Yeah,
they
well, I
schedule
think,
you.
I mean, I've already kind of presented it, right, Ed, or is it
They
gonna
may call
get?
you, I don't know if they'll have meetings.
Yeah, maybe,
The finance committee will be reaching out and
Yeah.
scheduling.
sure,
Have a
okay.
meeting to review people's budgets, probably.
Yeah,
Good.
but I mean, I heard the other, you know, Paul and Ryan talking about the, you know, the making changes to the bylaws and stuff. That's all good stuff, because like they said, stuff just hasn't been changed in a long time
No.
here, so.
Yep,
You know, be interested to see what comes out of that. So,
very good. Great.
all right.
All right.
Any
good.
questions, or?
No, I think we're all set. Anybody? No? Thanks very
Okay.
much for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
All right,
Ron.
Good to hear from you. So really, just thanks, everybody. I know sometimes it feels like we're belaboring points here, but I think it's really helpful to hear from the heads of departments every few months and just understand from them what's going on, and give you the opportunity to address any issues that you may have. So thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Very much. All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks.
All righty, let's see if we can pick up our schedule here. Next on the list, we have appointments and resignations. And we have 3 appointments on our list here. And first one, let me see, wait, sorry. First is an election worker. This is,
I'll make a motion to approve Jane Howard as an election worker.
okay, she's apparently also done that before, perhaps, it looks like, at some point in time.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'll second for purpose of discussion.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a discussion to appoint Jane Howard as an election worker. Do we have any discussion before we vote? Yeah, John?
So So this is an application for a person, for an election worker. And we're acting on this application. So do election workers not have to go through PPP?
They would have to go through PPPB because as of 2 years ago, the IRS changed our methodology, and they, instead of being paid on a W-9 as a vendor, they are now paid on a W-2 as an employee.
Right.
So basically, this is the equivalent of the appointment. If it goes through and once the select board has said, okay, we're good with this, it goes back to the town clerk. If the Board of Registers wants to move forward with that, then it would have to come through the PPPB on a PCF. Otherwise, we would not have any records of that to be able to pay the individual.
So so upon receiving an application, the first step is to see if the Board of Selectmen's even interested in letting this person work for the town, and if so it's a cursory approval, then it goes to the Board of Registrar, and it's up to the Board of Registrar to say, we need X number of workers, and
Correct.
Is this the same process we went through with the other ones most recently?
It is. It's just one that has come in, shall we say, outside the whole group.
And how many election workers do you know do we need?
I would not be able to answer that question.
Well, now we're 2 precincts. I was just curious. I know
Yeah.
we followed, the rules, but I'm pretty sure there's a rule that said after a certain amount of time, then it's I don't know, I have to go back to it now. We were kind of on track, and then this one seems to be a straggler.
Well, and these are all relatively short-term appointments. They're only until August, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
But now that you say that, I believe you're right, Rini, is that I think the select board appoints up through, oh God, I think it's sometime in August.
August 15th, I
And
think.
then, and then I believe
It's
it's
the registrars.
the Board of Registrars.
So I don't even think this is even our vote here.
And maybe the registrars vote?
I think it could be the registrar vote. I can actually look in my email. I saved it for the longest time because I thought we were done with this, and then I got rid of it.
Okay.
but upon the Register of Voters moving forward with it, they would still have to go through
The
PPP.
PQB, right.
Correct.
that's, which brings it all back to the select board.
Yeah, right,
Correct.
okay.
Well, it's safe to assume that is it safe to assume that anything that's being put through to us and/or Board of registrars is within the budget of the town clerk's office?
Right, correct.
So to not belabor this, should we at least go through and make a vote on this and say that we're
Moving it
agreement or
forward.
not? And if the registrars have to do a further vote, they would, or what would you prefer? Do we know that we can put our hands on who's in charge here on that?
On the Board of Registrars?
I
Well, whether
believe
it's
that-
their vote or whether it's our vote
Yeah.
tonight.
Yeah, I believe Rini's correct.
It may be the registrar's vote.
should-
We may not have even needed this
Yeah, and
at our
then-
level.
And then while she's looking for that, I'm just supposing this, John, but is your question also further reaching from your role on the PPPB? Because I know the fire chief started this with his PCFs, bringing people up to any minimum wage requirements or whatever, and put in the clause, or any future ones. And I know that Lucy, the town clerk, tried to do that also.
Well,
And- But you can't do that because any future ones would be new hires, new employees.
Right.
And you have to have that
Right, well,
paperwork authorizing the rates and everything.
Right, the unique situation with the fire department/ambulance department is they have their own pay scale, which has now gone through the whole process and been approved, and sets the minimum starting compensation, unlike anybody other than the town clerk, right? Because the town clerk's elected, so therefore exempt from PPP regulations and oversight. It sets the scale. But the reason I'm bringing this up is this hasn't come before PPP yet, and it just seems like it's inappropriate for it to already be here, because if we vote tonight, in essence, what we're voting is saying, I see no reason why this person shouldn't work for us. You have our test of blessing, go through the whole process and come back, And then we may say, oh, you know what, we changed our mind, or because we're going to have to vote a second time on this before they can even go on, because without that second form in the treasurer's office, this person can't get paid, and without that form, they can't work the poll station. You see what I mean? It seems like extra work.
It's a hybrid, because you've got an appointment process, and then you've got a different pay process combined with that, because of basically the ruling from a couple of years ago that moved them all from, like I say, vendors and W-9s of, you know, basically like paying, God,
So it's almost.
the Southampton bookstore or whatever, some books the town ordered versus paying myself as an employee.
Right.
And it switched all that and said, okay.
And we never
these
changed-
all now have to be treated as employees.
Right, I
Even
get-
though they're appointees.
Right.
I get that. It sounds like we never changed the rules to keep up with the modern times.
Well, they're what we need to do for the applications, I mean, where these need to go. I guess I'm not, on the last couple of election workers, I don't remember seeing this particular form
You know, either.
for them. I've seen PCFs, but I don't recall this particular form for a couple of the others, and maybe because they've already been, they were reappointments perhaps, I don't know.
No, I don't think that.
And this could be a new person on the schedule. I think
I don't
part of
remember
what
seeing
John,
this at
I
all.
think what you might be talking about is that we're handling it twice, whereas we may not need to be in the middle of this at this point in time.
Yeah, it says right here, the selectmen of every town shall annually, this is MGL.
In your mic, sorry.
It says the selectmen of every town shall annually, not earlier than July 15th and no later than August 15th, appoint election workers for each voting place or precinct. And then it goes on and on and on. So I think that after the 15th, then it becomes the registrars.
That is my remembrance.
Okay, so at that point, shall we table this for tonight then?
Well,
Or not?
I wouldn't suggest table it. I'd say refer it to
Refer
the
it back to-
register. because it's-
Refer it back to
It's outside
the
our,
town clerk and the board of registrars.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, so be it. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute, the motion I made was to approve it, so I'll rescind
Oh,
my
I'm sorry.
motion.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'll rescind my
Correct.
motion and motion to send it back to the town clerk.
Okay. All
I'll
right.
second that.
Second motion, all right, and then I heard a aye vote all the way around?
Yep.
Yep.
All right, no one opposed? All right. So this one will go back to the town clerk.
Okay.
Thank you on that for clarification. I'll keep up track with these. All right, and next, we have 2 requests for appointment to the Public Safety, and I think we called it the Public Safety Building Committee. We took out the word complex. Did we not?
Correct.
Yeah, Public Safety Building Committee. Janet Brown and William Barkham.
And currently, there are no at-large vacancies left for this. There is currently a vacancy for a representative from the historical, to represent the Historical Commission, and via the charge, there is a vacancy remaining for a representative from the Finance Committee. So in your packets, there should be some additional information. I took the
Yeah.
printout from the appointee schedule that Judy and the town clerk share, and went through that, crossed off the individuals that were on the original committee, that were, terms were until upon completion, that have not yet been appointed, or, and then added the new appointees for the positions, and there should also be a copy of the charge. So currently, it's a member from the Select Board, which would be Maureen Groden, the police chief Ian Illingsworth, the fire chief John Workman, a member of the Council on Aging or Friends of the COA to represent the senior community, which would be Cindy Palmer, a member of the Finance Committee, which we have none, a member of the Historical Commission, we currently have none. Don Warren has put in his application for that, and the Historical Commission is supportive of that. 4 members of the community or surrounding area with experience in engineering, construction, architectural, financial management, or previous public safety experience. And say from that list, the current 4 appointees at large would be Charles Konecki, Sarah Stein, Christina Madsen, and John O'Shea. And then the town administrator, which would be myself. So, like I say, Don Warren has put in his application for the historical position. One other individual has put in an application which would fill the at-large
Which we don't have.
commitment, and the individual actually has civil engineering background and is a registered professional engineer.
Madam Chair? Those 2 applications aren't before the body tonight.
Not before.
So I would suggest that we ask the town administrator or his assistant to draft letters to these 2 individuals, acknowledging the fact that we received it, and that as of right now, the 2 current open seats are a historical appointment and a finance appointment. And they've applied for the at-large spots. We don't see that they would qualify on one of those, so perhaps one of them will come back and also ask to be on the finance committee, which would be great. But then we send the letter off, and then we deal with the other things when they come up before us.
Yeah. Yeah, because we only created 4 at-large seats, is that right, when we did the charge?
Correct.
Do we have a sense whether we would get anybody from the Finance Committee? I know we've had trouble finding finance people in
Well,
general.
that's why I was suggesting maybe they would serve a dual role, but I
Yeah.
mean, we created the charge, we wrote the charge, we
Right.
started, I for one cautioned not to start filling these seats before the charge was done. Here we are now, so I think
Yeah.
we've made our bed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the charge was there, but we started
Breaking it down.
taking them as we got them, yeah, right, rather than waiting for the full slate, that's true.
And just so you know, I know that we have a very limited finance committee, John, as you know, and it's, right now, we're looking for someone to finance for the cost efficiency, we're looking for someone to finance for building, we're going to be putting together a senior center building committee with the donation that we received, and then we have a very limited capital committee. So I think that one thing I'm going to do, last year, the select board, we all sort of put our heads together and everybody went out to recruit somebody, and we were able to put together a finance committee for the budget process. Unfortunately, very few of them then put their name on the ballot for the following year. So I'm going to go through the town directory, and, because I think we're heading into budget season, we're already in the middle of it. We need to have more finance people, we need to have a capital committee. So I'm going to try to go through the town directory and maybe send out a postcard to people that have a background in business management, accounting, finance, and see if I can recruit a few people to step up.
Okay.
If anybody else has any other ideas, I think we have a bit of a void on the finance
Yeah.
side of things.
Right. All right, so in terms of these 2, I think we are stuck for tonight. We cannot take any action on these because we have no vacancies on the public membership, right? Doesn't mean that, if people.
Any at large, no.
Any at-large membership openings. If the Public Safety Building Committee is going to be meeting anytime soon?
7th or 6th of March, Charlie sent an email out to us.
I mean, that doesn't preclude anybody from attending the meeting.
Right.
They could still attend the meeting, but just not be a voting member, I guess, at this point in time. I guess that's about all we could suggest at this point in time until we see what else develops here.
Right. Unless at some point in the future,
Yeah.
the select board decides to amend the charge.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
I'm fine with all that, but I still think some sort of communication,
Yeah,
whether it be an email or a
absolutely.
letter,
Sure.
go back and even,
Yep.
you know, just to what you just said about attending the meetings and participating, just not voting.
Okay. Ed, would you take care of that? An email?
I will.
All right, okay. Thank you.
I might also suggest
Thank you,
sending a
Janet.
letter out to the individuals that were on the committee that aren't being reappointed, that we send a letter thanking them for their service.
Right. Okay. Okay, well, in some ways, we got the breadth of the committee like we were hoping to by getting some new faces and new energy on the committee, but we may have been a little short-sighted in terms of the number of open seats we wanted to have, at-large seats, but that's where we are for the moment. We'll see if we need to modify anything going forward. Okay? All right, so tonight, moving on to reports, Town Administrator report. Ed?
Certainly. Updates. I met with our Maya Insurance Risk Analysis Manager this past Thursday. For this past year, our claims have been good, but within the 3-year moving average, our workers' compensation claims have been high, and our 3-year average of vehicular accidents, while dollar amounts aren't high, the number of smaller accidents is high. Two things which came from the meeting is we may benefit from using the Maya trainings to build our rewards so that we do have credits to utilize against our both liability and workers' comp insurances, and we should definitely look at starting a safety committee to review both vehicular and personal accidents and injuries which occur.
Now, the people who would have to be eligible or should attend those Maya trainings would be the people who operate town-owned vehicles, is that right?
They offer different trainings for different things. So, I mean, that might be just one of them.
Okay.
Just on that line item, are you aware, did they provide you with a report indicating if there are any open claims, and if so, what are the reserves on those claims?
I'm sorry, I cannot hear you, John.
Did they provide you with a written report of all open claims? And if so, are there any claims with reserves? And what is the total reserves allocated against us at this time?
Yes, and the one open claim has recently been closed. That is the expensive one, which was over $200,000.
So after that one, you don't believe that there are any open claims with reserves? So we're
No.
down to zero, okay.
Okay. And there was a safety committee, or there has never been one?
There has never been one, at least since I've been here, so I would recommend starting one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then I attended an MMA webinar on cybersecurity and ransomware last week and found the information very useful, and it did tie in with our plans for the utilization of the Compact IT grant funding and our state-provided cybersecurity training. Randall Kemp and I have been working with Gallagher Enterprises and Stantec Engineering, preparing for the sidewalk installation along College Highway, Route 10, between Pomeroy Meadow Road and High Street to start this spring. And then Judy Zadonis has been receiving the annual town meeting reports completed by the departments and boards and committees. We have had a larger number return this year to this point in time than in the past several years. The deadline for submission of the annual town reports is March 1st. There are a number of items here in Town Hall which are in need of repair and either have been repaired in the past couple of weeks or are scheduled to be repaired in the upcoming few weeks. The main entrance door has had its latching mechanism repaired, so it should not stick open anymore. There are 3 toilets and 2 faucets scheduled for repair, and the electrician will be coming to move some additional circuits over to being included on the emergency generator if there is capacity in the transfer switch to do so. The main floodlight in the parking lot will also be repaired. And then upcoming select board meetings for March are to be determined.
Thought we had done the first two, maybe we didn't. Shall we do that right now while we're looking at it?
Yeah.
Do we have a select board meeting next Tuesday?
Do we have an executive?
Yes, we do.
Do. So our next regularly scheduled meeting would be March 1st,
Right.
then March 15th, and March 29th would be 3 Tuesdays. Does that sound okay with everybody? For regular open meetings, March 1, 15, and 29, okay? So be it, okay? How about any questions for Ed on his report here?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
I want to, on behalf of our great PPPB board, thank Ed for loaning us Judy to act as our clerk, posting the agendas, checking the mailboxes, and doing all that during her hours here at Town Hall.
You don't have to thank me, just thank Judy, please.
Sounds good, okay.
And I have a question. You mentioned about putting the sidewalk in, that's going to be on track. When do you think that'll start?
It's kind of why Randall and I started emailing everybody early. We'd like to get it going as early as possible. I think that's going to, shall we say, key around when the paving plants open again. I'm going to guess that that is probably going to be sometime in April. So I just wanted to make sure that everything was planned out and scheduled so it could start as soon as possible.
Yeah, we have all the permits from the DOT, so we're fine on that one.
We found out there was one, because Jeff Dugas from Gallagher had asked if he could have a copy of the updated plans that Mass DOT had approved, and also a copy of the permit. And he did notice in the permit that Mass DOT did not allow him to work in the public way at all. There is a small section where they're going to have to do a small cut into Route 10 to put some additional granite curbing in the area where the sidewalk will meander out closer to Route 10. So he called that to Richard Bryant's attention at Stantec. So Richard contacted Mass DOT today. Mass DOT actually got right back to him, noting that, yes, that would be required, and they would be amending the permit to allow them to work in the public way, Route 10, for that short area where they will have to cut in to add that granite curbing.
Good.
Have you heard anything from the Cemetery Commission around the repair of the fence there?
No.
Would you like me to reach out to them and ask?
I've got to reach out to them
Yeah.
Okay.
anyway on renewing, since when we got into it, the water line replacement in the cemetery,
Yeah,
which was
right.
originally quoted as a non-prevailing wage project. Once we converted it into what it should be, a prevailing wage project, was a lot more than was originally
The
asked
budget,
for or
yeah.
approved. So I have to revisit that with them to see if they're going to request additional funding some way
Right.
for that project to continue forward. So I will ask them what their
Okay.
plans are on the fence
And
also.
I think, actually, we were talking earlier today, Ed and I, the head of the Cemetery Commission was not able to make her report when she was scheduled. She was out of town, and so we were talking about getting her scheduled possibly for the next meeting, so that would be a question that could be dealt with at that next
Do it
meeting.
hand in hand if there are funds.
Yeah.
Or if they're going to be interested in going for capital or something.
right.
Good to know that.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Is
what
that,
I'm
would that
thinking.
qualify for historical CPC?
I would think so.
I would think so, too.
I would definitely think so.
We have a meeting coming up, so.
Okay, very good. Okay, if no questions of Ed, how about some select board report summaries? Let's start with Joy, and we may end up down the other end.
So we heard from planning board.
Yeah, talk into your mic there, Joy, please.
Oh, sorry. I forget where it is.
I know.
We heard from planning board. Their meeting for tomorrow was canceled. Their next meeting, I believe, will be March 2nd at 7 p.m. Open Space met last week. They discussed the property that we had in our handouts about the water department is putting in an application to CPC in regards to.
Right.
So they were looking for letter support from Open Space, which Open Space did grant them, and they're going for a CPC application. It looks like it's going to be a matching grant that they're going for. They discussed the Hendrick property donation and doing some kind of ribbon cutting in April or May to commemorate that. It's also would be, this year's the 50th anniversary of the Lineman Conservation Area contribution, so they were discussing that also being commemorated. They went over their 2022 goals, and their next meeting will be March 10th at 6 p.m. Conservation's next meeting will be March 7th, also at 6 p.m. And Housing Authority, we heard from, they have a meeting, a housing production meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. And their normal Housing Authority meeting is March 7th at 6 p.m. That's all.
Okay, very good. Reading.
Community Preservation is meeting next Wednesday, the 23rd at 5:30. They haven't met recently. Public Safety Building Committee is meeting Monday, the 7th at 4 p.m. They also, this is the first meeting of the reconfigured committee. The Board of Assessors met this afternoon at 4 o'clock. They have not been successful in the recruitment of a principal assessor. They will be submitting a request to PQB for the interim PA, Dave Zagorski, to continue on an interim basis for the next 12 weeks. He is doing up to 15 hours per week. They're addressing the work of the office, personal property taxes, abatements, chapter lands, paperwork, et cetera. And I don't know when their next meeting is because they were still meeting when I left. Council on Aging, busy. They met on the 2nd of February. The Senior Center has been closed to group activities, but is resuming this week. The Memory Cafe is scheduled for this Thursday at 10. They're also having one March 24th and April 21st. This is a great program, so if there are folks out there that are dealing with memory issues, they and their caregivers are welcome to come to the Memory Cafe, which is a very exciting program to also be a part of other people dealing with the same thing. There are ongoing programs that are resuming. Check out the Senior Center newsletter. I just got today a draft of the March newsletter, a lot of good programs. The program coordinator position is now posted. Thank you, Ed. 14 hours per week. 2 nursing students from UMass are interning this semester with the Senior Center on Wednesdays. Joan and they are working on a project that focuses on seniors and safety. There's an initial group looking into the next steps regarding the donation of David Parsons and his will towards the design and plan for a new senior center. There's a meeting this Thursday with Ed Gibson and attorney Zadonis Kemp to clarify the will, the donation amount, and the requirements of developing, quote, the final plan, which will be due by next year. So I'm asking that perhaps Janet Kane be on the agenda for one of the next select board meetings, or whoever else, to update this board on what we know so far. And the next meeting for the Council on Aging is the 2nd of March.
Okay. Very good, thank you. All right, Francine.
Okay. The Norris School Committee met on February 9th, and at that meeting, they approved the calendar for the school year 2022 to 23. The superintendent reported the vaccination rate at Norris School as being 48% among Norris students and 94% for Norris staff, with the aggregate being 55% vaccination rate at Norris. She also reported that over 200 Norris school families and staff have signed up to receive the home testing kits that are available through the school. She expressed a desire for consistency regarding the masking policy among the 5 towns, since they all feed into one high school and many families have children in elementary as well as high school, and the consistency would be important for them as well. Just to report that Norris is applying for a grant to support its after-school and out-of-school activities. They're requesting $40,000, which is what they had last year, had been granted last year. The school committee conducted its first review of proposed changes to its public gift to school policy, which would permit the superintendent to accept gifts in the name of the school committee valued at $250 or less. Any gift above that amount would require the acceptance by the school committee. The Norris preliminary budget will be ready for consideration at its next meeting. The school committee also conducted a second review of the all-district committee, which will be comprised of 2 representatives from each town that will work collaboratively to achieve excellence in education, to provide a supportive partnership for families, a professional workplace for staff, and cost-effective programming to its citizens. So you can see that, you know, there's a coalition building, and I think for consistency, I think that's a great thing. Just to let you know, it was just posted that there will be a joint meeting between the Board of Health and Norris and the Norris School Committee scheduled for this Friday, February 18th at 5:30. It will be via Zoom, and the topic is regarding the mask policy. You know that the governor announced that as of February 28th, they're lifting the requirement of masks in school and leaving that decision up to the local group. So that should be a very interesting meeting. And that's it on Norris. The HR Shared Feasibility Group met for the first time with the consultant on Monday, and that person will conduct the study and the analysis of the HR needs in the participating towns. This was an introductory session to inform the consultant of our needs and expectations, and she's going to be setting up individual interviews to be within the next couple of weeks to meet with key members from each town responsible for payroll, personnel management, and the like. The next meeting of this HR group is tomorrow morning at 8:30. That's why I don't want to stay late tonight. Okay. And then finally, the Bylaws Committee met on February 2nd to finalize its dog bylaw draft, which we'll be looking at later this evening, and to make its plans for a public meeting on that draft bylaw that will be sometime in March. Right now, it's tentatively scheduled for March 24th. But thank you. That's it.
Okay, all right. John?
Yep, so yes, last night, the Hampshire Regional School Committee met in a special meeting, and I think everybody on this board was there. 2 topics of conversation was the mask mandate. They ultimately ended up voting to lift the mandate as of February 28th at the high school and middle school, and then the next one was the budget. And that was a much longer conversation. It was clear that for those who have been following along at home, they dropped the additional request for an enhanced graduation ceremony, and the ask was for 2 additional support staff members, guidance counselor and I believe an interventionist or adjustment counselor. Ultimately, the level funded budget for percentages passed with a amendment to pull an additional $121,000 out of their collective $3 million reserve to go with the level funded assessments to the town. Southampton is of the 5 communities, is the only community coming in at under 2.5, and I think we're 1.74, if my memory serves me right.
Chesterfield's under 2.
Is under 2.5?
Well, it's negative.
Yeah, it's
Well, yeah,
negative.
so
$170.
Chesterfield had a massive drop in enrollment over the past 2 years. So they have a negative. They're getting a credit of $117,000.
$17,000.
Goshen, the town administrator from Goshen made a very passionate plea that if we went with the higher one between that and their regional elementary school, they'd only have $2,000 left in their ceiling.
To run the town?
So I think while it was contentious, I think it was a well-run meeting, and you know, I applaud Margaret Larson, a Southampton resident, for doing that. And then the PPPB board will meet this Thursday to take up a few items. We will not be having our public hearing on the adjustments. It was pointed out that there's a technicality and there's a new format we have to, not a new format, there's a different process we have to follow to do that. So we'll look to do that. After that Thursday, we're probably going to move our March meeting since it falls on a holiday.
What do you mean adjustments, John?
The wording to the short-term disability
Okay.
to clarify, and the removing selectmen from the whole
Okay. Are you talking
document.
about the personnel policies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Change to the
sick,
sick time policy and the addition of Juneteenth.
Juneteenth.
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah, and I apologize for, after 2 years for looking for that document, of actually finding it and pointing it out to you.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's it for me.
Okay.
Just want to mention about the school committee vote. You mentioned about $3 million, but that collection of funds, I mean, some of it's the excess and deficiency, and some of the capital items will be coming out of that. So it's not that they have that extra amount, some of it's designated, right?
That's the dollar amount after the designations that they made.
That's the dollar amount after the, and from what collection of funds, besides school choice, excess and deficiency, and what else?
The busing.
The busing.
So the busing, as I went back and looked at it afterwards, so they budget $590,000, and it's usually running between 800 and 900. So the difference there, they take out of that account until the reimbursement comes through. So they need the placeholder. And their argument was that keeps it level funded, so they're not, the spikes in there aren't impacting the communities and the assessments.
Right, they have to go back to the towns.
But
But they're also, aren't they embarking on a new contract with busing?
Correct, and there's a built-in
Yep.
increase in there already.
Yeah,
right.
5.5%, I believe.
That's what they said.
Yes.
Right.
Yep. And I think in terms of the masking mandate, they said that they're lifting it, but it's also optional for those teachers or students, right, that want to continue wearing their masks, right?
Right.
And teachers.
And teachers, right. Yep, okay, yeah, no, I think it was a really informative meeting, it was well-run,
Yeah,
and,
the interesting note, though, is Westhampton has not, is not lifting there, so there's a conflict there between the
Right.
local
Oh, that's
Board of Health and the
interesting.
school that
yep,
hopefully will not be repeated at the Southampton level.
Well, I believe the difference is Westhampton was an advisory.
right,
Here in Southampton, it is a mask mandate in
Right.
public buildings.
yeah.
Yeah, Friday night.
Or
it's
by
all
the
gonna-
Board of Health.
Yeah, Friday night will all come out. I know Francine won't be able to make it, so I'll report on that one for her benefit, but I know we have the Board of Health and the attorneys are going to be there, and it's going to be a long nighter.
Okay,
I'll watch, it's being recorded, so I'll watch it.
yep, all right.
Thanks.
Okay, just briefly on some of the other committees that I'm involved with, the cost efficiencies, the ad hoc cost efficiencies committee is going to be meeting this Thursday, and this will be our third meeting, and we're going to be taking a look at some of the homework we've been trying to do on some enhanced revenue ideas, and see where we go with that. The master plan implementation committee is going to be meeting on the 23rd. This will be a quarterly meeting. We haven't met since October. The ad hoc tech committee has been meeting a little bit more frequently. They just had a presentation, I think I'd mentioned a couple meetings ago, they had a presentation from Whip City Fiber. The last meeting they had last week was with Hoyoke Gas and Electric and South Hadley Electric. Is that right? I think it's called
Shield.
Yeah.
Shield, something like that. Basically, they're already in partnership together, and gave a very, very interesting presentation in terms of their possibilities and capabilities of providing some broadband assistance to the town. So both presentations have been very, very enlightening. And then there will be another presentation coming up very soon. We've already had one on our website revamping and development through Civic Plus, and there'll be a second presentation from another vendor coming up in the next week or
February
so.
28th, I believe it
28th, is it? Okay. And so they're really moving forward, trying to look at these kinds of situations to help us improve our situation here in town. So they've been very, very active. The grant committee itself has not met recently. We probably need to get another meeting in early March. There's been a couple requests about some things that we're looking into, but haven't had a chance to get together with the various other meetings. And then I think, just lastly, to follow up on the MHP grant to the Housing Authority, We do have that, and just to explain what we got told about that, this was from the MHP saying that they were trying to help communities use local funds for affordable housing. So there were 3 communities selected to receive support through the Technical Assistance Program for housing, local housing trusts. And those were Medford, Southampton, and Winchester. So we were selected from a pool of 11 different communities, which is pretty phenomenal in its own right. And that gives us 8 months or up to 8 months of direct technical assistance to work with the Housing Authority to develop this housing trust notion. And I think that's great. And so we have a request to sign and accept that grant. And I would like to put that forward that as the CEO, I guess I'm one of the ones authorized to sign this grant, so I would like to make a motion, if I could, to ask the Select Board if they would approve my signing that grant this evening, so we can get that underway.
I move to designate Chris the authority to sign the grant
Okay.
on behalf of the
Second.
Select Board.
Any further discussion on that?
I have one request. Would it be appropriate if I could write a thank you note to our former representative, Sabadosa, and our current representative, Pease, because they did advocate for us to get the grant?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, fine, we will get that done. Great, so whatever that value is, we don't know exactly, but 8 months of technical assistance is pretty appreciable. So we really thank you, and thank Joy for spearheading getting the paperwork in the first place and making that all happen, so that's great. All right, we've got a little bit of old business we can go through without too much problem, I hope here. COVID-19 update, Ed?
Numbers are dropping rapidly. Of course, they're dropping from a point that they were higher than they were a year ago, but that's a good sign. So, hospitalizations are dropping, but they're still pretty close to capacity. And I will say that the medical service community in the hospitals are hurting and taking, shall we say, also a mental beating from that. So we will, hope that those numbers keep dropping basically as quickly as they have been over the last month.
Okay.
Southampton still has a mask mandate. Do you know whether or not the Board of Health plans to address that on Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had actually reached out to Michelle Randazzo at KP Law, actually asking what happens if, because if the school committee would like to remove the mask mandate at Norris on February 28th, and the Board of Health has a mask-wearing mandate for the entire town for public buildings, does the Board of Health mask mandate supersede a school committee vote to remove or end the mask mandate along with the state mandate on February 28th? The response was yes, the Board of Health mandate would stay in place. Michelle did recommend very strongly that the two boards actually have the discussion together so that they're on the same page, and that is what is happening Friday with that joint meeting. So I'm very happy for that to occur.
Yeah, just because it came up, I would just clarify that over the past 2 years, the Board of Health and all the mandates that they have issued have always exempt the schools from it. I haven't had time to go back and read this latest one, but all the joint sessions we've had all along. That being said, I think it's going to be a moot point. I think they're all going to come up at the same time.
Yeah. That's my sense, too.
Okay, good. All right, CARES Act update, anything?
Definitely winding down. I believe we've gotten the last of the invoices. I'm just going through all of our records to make sure that we have captured all the expenses in the correct categories before we do that final report.
Yeah, I think I'd mentioned I'd seen a couple on the warrant for some payroll ones that I hadn't recognized before that, we just need to be sure that they were done. Obviously, they were incurred during December, and then that should wrap it up pretty well. Hopefully, there shouldn't be any more invoices coming at you, one would hope. And there's a report you've got to do to the state or feds
Yes.
or whoever,
Yes.
state? Okay. All right. East Street Bridge update.
Moving forward, they're making progress out there. There's been a few bumps in the road, but like I say, it's moving forward. They're constructing it. They had to make a few changes with the rebar for the piers, for how the bridge is going to sit on them after they actually got the piers to sit down into the ground where they're supposed to be and have the pressures on them that are required to hold the bridge up. We actually did hire a testing company to look at things like the rebar, the steel that's produced for the bridge. They will look at the concrete as it comes out to make sure that it meets the specified engineering requirements when it's poured. I will let you know that one thing that came up that we didn't think about at the time is one of the requirements of what they check on is actually the production facility of the steel. So they will be making a trip to Lancaster, PA, for us to actually check out that physical plant. So that came up in the last week. So, but like I say, well, we know that due to the steel supply that project's completion date has been changed from June of 2022 into September of 2022. But like I say, it is moving forward, and that's good. It'll be completed before the end of this calendar year.
Okay. All right. Rapid test kits.
We received both batches, and let me see if I can do this from memory. 200 have been distributed to the Norris School. Thank you to Stephanie Foss for picking them up here and taking them to the school. 100 have been distributed to the COA. 50 went to the community cupboard. And I believe Chris delivered those, and they were actually wondering if they would utilize all of them or not. Some of them may be coming back from there. They have been distributed to our town employees for the town hall, the highway department, the fire department, the library, the police department. I still have some to get to the water department. And I'm going to reach back out to Stephanie to see if they need some for their employees, specifically at Norris School. And then I think the only ones from that original distribution schedule, other than those that we have left, was there were 50 to be split between Smith Vocational and Hampshire Regional.
Okay.
And I think I remembered all of them.
Yeah, so that would be just that first batch, though, and we have another batch of 700 kits, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, I'm just hoping that people are using them, and then we don't run into a expiration issue, et cetera, right? So.
Correct. And then I will remind everybody that we have some with February expiration dates on them and some with April expiration dates on them. I had reached out to the supplying company, the manufacturer, when we got the ones for February, and they sent me the documentation right from the FDA. Number one, they clarified that the expiration dates are the last day of the month. And then number two, that the FDA has extended the expiration dates on all of these tests by 3 months. So the ones that we have that say February 2022 are really the end of May 2022, and the ones we have from April are really the end of July 2022.
Yep, okay. And just to clarify on the community cupboard, as you know, the cupboard serves not only Southampton, but 3 or 4 neighboring towns, and they had asked, and I had responded that I wanted them to give preference to residents from Southampton, given that the money was appropriated to the town, was given to the town, and that should be the highest priority, and that others that they might be serving at the cupboard that needed them, they could be counseled to approach their own boards of health in their towns and/or given the website to actually order them online from the government. I haven't heard back from them, but they will probably get back to me in the next week or so to say how many they're really going to use, and we may get 20 of them back or something, and if so, we'll put them back to redistribute elsewhere. I'd rather they be used, but I think we really do need to be sure they get priority to Southampton residents.
And Jerry Swanson, our public health director, actually brought the nursing students that are working through the COA down to the Southampton Meadows. I'm going to say a word or two about that after the
And
end
thank
here.
you, those are the distributions that I forgot about.
Yeah, but they were going down there and also asking if they wanted help with getting a vaccine, do they want help with a number of different things, and they distributed the test kits to the residents and management there.
Okay, very good. Okay, if nothing else there, voice over IP update.
Yes, the phones in the system have been signed off by myself and have been ordered, so that is now in process. And I would also like to thank the Select Board for being smart enough not to authorize me to actually purchase the second conference phone, because this salesperson did get back to me, and we are getting 2 free conference phones.
Hey, very good.
Along with this order. So that ended up working out well. So I will expect, depending on if something goes wrong with supply line chains or whatever, that we will probably be looking to actually physically install these here in Town Hall in probably the 60 to 90 day period coming up.
Okay. All right, good, well, that's good news. And then there'll be obviously some training and so forth on using them, et cetera, but
Yes.
that'll come with, I assume, yep, okay.
That comes along with the installation.
Right, okay. Very good, all right. That's it for old business. Moving on to new business. There are 3 or 4 things. First one, I guess, up, Francine, the proposed dog bylaw. It's short name of it. It's really a little bit more complicated than that, but we'll call it the dog bylaw for tonight. And this is a draft for Select Board's first look, I guess.
Yes. And what I did, don't look at the version that's in your kit. I left, in your packet, I left at everyone's place. At the bottom, you'll know you have the right one because it'll say February 22. And so we're looking at a consolidation of 2 or 3 existing bylaws into a little more comprehensive piece here, and we got it down from 3 bylaws to 2. Anyway, added a new one out of concern, humane care and treatment of domesticated animals. That's Article 15. And then, as I said, there were a couple different bylaws applying to dogs and dog licenses and dog kennels that we consolidated into one article, and that's Article 16, and that goes on page 2, from page 2 to page 4. Our plan is to do it as we did with the previous set around those of, certainly we feel the public will have a strong interest, is to have, to post the draft bylaw after we look at them again tonight, post them on the town website, give people about 3 weeks to give us feedback online, and those comments back to us will be directed back to the bylaw committee, and we'll review them and consider them. And then somewhere around, and again, depending upon our COVID situation and other considerations, we're looking at having a public hearing here in person on March 24th, if we're all permitted to gather and so on and so forth. So we're waiting for guidelines on that. But that way, we will gather from people, their thoughts on some of the revisions that we're proposing. As we did with the other one, we will take the appropriate comments and we'll make the changes, and we get a sense of how people feel about what we're proposing here, what changes they would like to see, or what they particularly like, or even identify things that we may not have considered in this. But, so this is the February 2022 version. So if you want to make a few comments here, but what we're looking for is the approval of the select board to post both of these bylaws on the town website in the next week.
And just to note that Bylaws Committee has worked with the animal inspector to
We
go through
did,
these?
yes.
So,
And
Who is who?
Nicole Fletcher.
Nicole,
Okay. And that's different from the animal control person?
right, the animal control is out of Westfield.
Animal Control's Westfield.
Okay, all right, but it's
We use
usually the
Westfield
police
for
that
our animal
contact
control.
Right.
And so they would have to abide by whatever our town bylaws are if they apply to them.
Right.
If there's any implication there.
Yep. And I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Article 15 was not one that had really existed before, but then
didn't. It's
since then,
new.
state law has come in about treating, not leaving your animals in a hot vehicle, et cetera, et cetera. And so this was a proposed addition to put in the humane care and treatment of domesticated animals based on the new state law that came in a couple of years ago, I believe.
So it's not different than the version that was in your packet originally, it's just reordered. We moved some sections around a little bit because it would make a little more sense the way you see it in this version.
Can I make a couple of comments? Under D, in the first section, page 1, there's just a typo. It says "shall" twice. So I think it reads better with the second "shall" removed.
Okay.
But you can look at that.
Which one is that, sorry?
All right, under D. Under D on the first page. The second to last line. Keeper of the dog shall immediately shall.
Okay.
Okay.
And then the issue comes up again about fees. So the fee it says, any person who violates this bylaw shall be liable to a penalty fee. Who is the enforcing officer of this bylaw
Be the police.
or body?
I think there would be,
The Bylaw Review Committee, I would think. Sorry, couldn't resist.
I think it's the police.
I think it would be the police and maybe the animal inspector.
Okay, I think that probably
We'll
should
check
be.
that out.
I think that should be clarified. This came up before, and I don't know when we were reviewing this, but let's say Thursday evening, the police find a wandering dog. I see on Facebook, people say, there's a dog loose, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
The police try to determine who it is. They can't determine who it is. They call the animal control. They have the animal control take the dog. Our town office is not open on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So you're saying here that they can't pick up their dog until they pay the town clerk. I think that's a unnecessary hardship. So I don't know where, we already dealt with this in the past. I don't know if it was on this bylaw review or whatever, but I just think that's potentially a problem.
Is it just paying for the license?
No, it's
It
paying
says
for
you
the
can't
fee.
you can't get your dog out until you pay your license.
Right, so that can just be done online. They can provide a
Yeah.
confirmation of payment.
No, what we're talking about is that if it's picked up and it's picked up by the animal control and they take it to Westfield, there's a charge in order to release the dog that has to be paid.
John's responding to what I'm saying, which is
Yeah.
basically,
Number
this
G.
says that you can't pick up the dog until you pay your license to the
Right.
town
Yeah,
clerk.
But you can pay
That's
your
it.
license online now,
Yes.
which is one
Yeah.
thing.
Thank
So
you.
this- having town hall open is not quite the issue that it was.
Right.
Um,
I just wanted to point that out to you because that was something that people mentioned in the past.
Yeah.
Was
Okay.
an unnecessary
Right.
hardship. Okay, there might be a way
Not that
to,
they shouldn't have licensed a dog in the first place,
right, yeah.
but
Okay, there might be a way to,
And we're fine with paid the license rather than issue of the license? Because I'm just going to get into a little technicality here is if my dog is not up to date on its shots,
Right.
I'm going to be
Right.
denied that license.
correct,
Yes.
yep. Yeah, that's spelled out in here, I think, right? So the,
but in terms of what, the releasing of the dog is what Ed's referring to. You can pay your dog license online, but there's no guarantee that you're uploading a rabies certificate. So do you want to say issue? Do you want to say payment of? I think that's important if this is going to be enforceable.
yeah, okay. Well, we'll have,
I'll have to look at what's online, whether or not, I mean, they're certainly aware of the dogs whose shots have expired at the time you go to renew your license.
yeah, when you look at E here, it talks about every license issued shall have a description of the symptoms of
No.
rabies. Yeah, it doesn't really say that, though. We'll have to clarify that, maybe with Lucy in terms of what's printed
Yeah,
online.
under C, it says,
Yeah, well, you see, yeah, shall not be granted a license,
right.
shall not grant a license unless it's got a vaccination. Okay, well, we'll double check that. So the main issue is whether, I mean, they wouldn't have gotten a license anyway, so somebody to pay their license, to be issued a dog license has to have a rabies certificate already, right?
You have to have a rabies certificate within 3 years in order,
Right.
every 3 years,
Right.
in order to get a license.
Right.
But I can't imagine that you're going online paying that the system is aware whether your dog is up for a renewal of rabies. I don't
Don't
I'd be
know.
surprised if
Yeah,
that
okay.
level of sophistication exists in that payment
I hear you,
process.
and I need to go look at that,
Yep,
because
okay.
that's a good point. If we're
Yep,
going
valid
to
point.
encourage people, or we would say that if you have your license, your rabies is up to date, that you could pay for the license online, otherwise you need to come in person. That may be where we
I
are.
wonder if the facility holding the dogs on our behalf in Westfield has the capability of administering rabies shots. And then if so, we just put in there, you have to provide proof upon trying to pick up the dog, and if you don't, you're going to be charged, as if the dog doesn't have it and they get the shots right then.
Yeah.
Possibly. I don't know.
I don't know their staffing there, whether or not they have the capability of doing that.
Yeah, but something that
But
can
I
be checked
can
out. Yep,
check
okay.
out Westfield.
Any other big issues that you're seeing here? A lot of this was language that was there before, it's just been regrouped. It was kind of scattered in the bylaws before in 3 different places, and so it just seemed to make sense, I think, to consolidate it all in one place when you're talking about dogs. But anybody have any thoughts here?
I'm going to make one other comment.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
What page?
Refers you back to Chapter 140, Section 140, Section 136A for definitions applicable to this bylaw. I was going to ask, what's a domesticated animal? You know, is that a domesticated pig? What, far from a dog or a cat?
Rabbits are.
So I just looked up 136A, and here's the definition under 136A of a domesticated animal. An animal designated as domestic by regulations promulgated by the Department of Fish and Game.
Promulgated.
So now we're in a circular chase.
Yeah. Okay. I think at one point Nicole had looked up something, and she definitely didn't want it to be farm animals, because that was a separate
Right.
thing that she's
No,
dealing
right.
with. So, yeah, and I think the committee was really focusing on dogs, not any other kind of animal, but
Right.
there's nothing else that gets licensed or kenneled usually. I don't know.
Yeah, and people were concerned about broadening the coverage for,
Right, and that's what you
Other
did in
animals.
Section 1. You broadened the coverage, so you didn't say dogs anymore.
Right.
No.
But now like
So
I
should
said,
we-
how far is the circular chase to find out
Yeah.
what really is domesticated animals?
So is your recommendation to not put the reference of 136A in there, or? or better define domesticated animal.
Well, if maybe we can find the definition
definition.
under fish and game of the domesticated animals and put that in there too, or otherwise, I think we're going to have to maybe, at least on domesticated animals, bite the bullet and put that particular definition in here,
Okay,
in addition to that disclaimer for definitions being
All
in
right, so we would start
136A.
section 1 as the definition and then go down from there. Okay.
okay. All right,
Well, that's a good suggestion.
okay.
As is the issue over the online payment of licenses when the town hall is closed.
Yep. All right,
So we'll work that out
Yep.
to the best we can, and then, and again, these changes this is what will get posted on the town, your comments tonight will get posted on the town website and also go to the public hearing on this for final, and then it will
come back
come
around.
back around.
Yep. All right. Do we need a motion to proceed, or shall we, how would you like to handle that? Do we need a formal motion to say that we are okay at least posting the dog bylaw?
I personally don't feel like I can endorse it right now.
But to post it at least?
Yeah, I don't feel like, I think it needs a little bit more work.
Okay. Want to have it come back around again?
I think, I mean, that's my preference.
Anybody else? I mean, if we make these changes as suggested, do you want to see it one more time before it gets posted up for public comment?
I mean, I had
Well, I mean,
read
if
it
it's
on
not gonna
here,
get
and then today I got a printed copy of it. So I'm always bothered when that happens, to be honest with you, because I make comments on what I read before the meeting, and then I'm not going to reread it in the middle of a meeting. So I'm always going back and forth whenever that happens, and I just don't feel like I have a good handle on it, and I'm just not sure who has signed off on it yet. Has the Board of Health?
Yes, they did.
They
We
did?
did this with
And
the
the police,
animal
the police
inspector.
did as well?
Yes,
Ian was one of the first ones that had done this, and then it took a while to get
Right.
Nicole involved, to get her availability.
No.
She came to a meeting and went through it word
Really,
for
the
word
only
with us.
changes I said, there were no
Yeah.
substantial changes here from the version that was in your packet. It was
Yeah.
just some of the
Renumbering.
paragraphs were reordered and moved into, from one section to another. But there were no substantive changes to the version that you got. So whatever comments you had, we can find the section here and address it.
I mean, I just
You know, the
continue to
group has
have,
to-
I
the
just
group has
continue
to
to have
take a
problems
vote
with
on it.
bylaws that establish social mores in town. Our neighbor dog comes over every day, my dog goes over to visit them every day. You know, you're basically saying that that's illegal according to this bylaw, that they have to be unleashed unless they're on their own property. And I just don't, you know, like, I think there's a lot of reference to Mass General Law here that's not obvious to the reader of this. So I just don't support bylaws that establish social mores in town.
Yeah, I don't think it
And I-
says that it has to be not on somebody else's property. It's,
It says that they have to be,
the other person has to have knowledge or permission that, you know, you're comfortable with your neighbors, you make an arrangement that my dog's going to come by, your dog can come by, and the main thing is to have it under some level of control, whether that's voice control or a leash is up to you, however you define.
It's the agreement. It's not having dogs on someone's property who did not give you permission. But in my instance, you know, my neighbor's dogs come in our yard, and I'm fine with it. There's no issue, and mine, I'm sure, would wander into their property. As long as we have that agreement, it's fine. It's for the people that don't, and that the police then get the call, and then, you know, those resources are used trying to solve something that the people had a better understanding of expectations, that wouldn't have happened.
Joy?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So in regards to just the first paragraph, there's a lot of subjective terminology in there in regards to, for example, wholesome food and veterinary care sufficient to prevent suffering. I think those are very subjective terms that I don't know how we're going to enforce. Also, I don't think wholesome is a legal term. I looked it up in Blacklaw's dictionary to see if there was, and there wasn't anything. I would suggest maybe changing that to like adequate food or something, but wholesome, like I'm not cooking my dog chicken dinners every night. Is that what you mean by wholesome? Yeah, and veterinary care sufficient to prevent suffering is subjective too, as well. And I don't know
Okay.
how that's going to be enforced. What else did I have? Oh, and in regard to section 1, let me just make sure. No person owning a dog shall permit such a dog to be off leash in town. I would, just going to Reni's point, I would suggest it being changed maybe to on town property, because I don't think you can regulate what people are doing on their private property.
Okay. On town property.
Okay.
Or someone else's property. That's the other thing.
I mean, that's where that continues on,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's where that in town, but maybe it's too vague in that regard, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, well, I'm hearing a few comments here. I'm not sure if Bylaws was planning on meeting again. Do we want to?
Well, we do have another meeting scheduled, but not for March, but we're going to have to do something. We'll have to get together sooner
Yeah.
to make these changes.
So if Bylaws meets again and comes back with a revision for the March 1st meeting? Is that what people are
Or you
preferring?
trust us to make these revisions?
I mean, they're still going to get
Because again,
comments.
this is still another draft.
They're still going to get comments by the public that send in comments online and/or attend a hearing,
Yeah.
a
'Cause,
meeting,
I
rather.
mean, we make changes and then we go to the public and they want it changed back or whatever it is, you know, this could be, I feel like it's a circular
Yeah.
firing squad.
Right.
So, all right, we'll take a shot and we'll try to schedule a meeting for sometime next week. And then,
All right.
if you want, whatever the motion is of the committee is
We
what
don't have a
we'll
motion on the
follow.
floor yet, so let's have a motion for something.
I'll make a motion to since two of the three committee members are sitting here at the table, to address the concerns already raised, and then go ahead and post it for public comment, and ultimately to bring back before the select board.
And, well, there's still an opportunity for more revisions.
Correct.
Okay. I hear the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that. I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay. 4-1. Motion passes, okay? So Bylaws Committee will make changes, address these issues as raised tonight, and
And then move it forward.
move it forward with Ed to find a time to get it posted on the town website with a date for,
By next week, then we'll have a due date, and then we'll
public comment.
Try to stick to the public hearing date of the 24th.
yeah,
To
and
give
public,
everybody sufficient
public meeting,
time.
not a public hearing per
Public
se.
meeting, yes.
Right, okay.
Can I just ask, since it came up earlier today, how many bylaw committee bylaws do we anticipate going in front of KP Law?
We had 1, 2, 3
Well,
gone?
we sent 4.
You sent along
We sent
4
We've sent them 4,
before this.
yeah.
Before
They
this,
have 4 to look at
They
right
have
now.
4 now.
Okay.
That's 4.
And then
And-
I think there were a couple that still were not responded to that were held over.
Well, they were just to be rejected.
Those are the eliminations.
Yeah,
I'll
okay.
I'll send you the comments that Michelle
Okay.
had on those.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so if this one got through in time, I don't know if it will, but there's 4 before them right now.
Before these two.
Yeah. Yeah, before these two, right, correct. Okay,
And they need to be reviewed before their articles on the warrant, right? So they're going to be basically reviewing it twice?
Huh?
They're going to review them, and then when they show up on the warrant,
They wouldn't review them again.
they won't review them anymore?
just once.
Okay.
okay,
And then they go to the Attorney General, and hopefully we're fine.
yeah, okay. All right, moving on. ARPA funds, update. Ed, do you have anything in particular? Sorry? Sure, we can, do you have a copy? I just wrote all over mine.
What of this? I just
Yeah.
scribbled all over mine, too.
Can we
I'm
send it to you?
sorry.
I wrote my
Do you have
notes
yours?
separately,
Okay.
so.
Or make a copy? I just scribbled all over mine. Thank you. All right,
Okay, but this is still a draft, and so people here in town have not seen this yet.
yeah.
So getting it out there is
Yeah.
not advisable.
And while you're.
Part of a public meeting now.
Yeah.
Pardon?
It's part of a
It's
public
public
meeting
meeting.
now.
No,
It's a
I-
public record.
I hear that, all right.
Yeah, And while we have you here, could we just ask who you are, since you've been sitting here so diligently?
I know, I'm sorry.
Come on up to the mic, please. Just introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm sorry. My name is Doc Prine. I'm a reporter with The Reminder.
Okay, very good. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so ARPA funds update. As such.
Not much new. You did hear about the proposal for the premium pay earlier this evening. And
Right.
then other than that, I think we'll probably maybe have some general direction after the surveys are closed out and added up. And then we can go from there as far as if we want to move forward with, shall we say, designating some or all of our roughly $1.8 million in Arpa funds that we will receive over 2 years. We haven't received all that yet. Into the category of lost revenue, or if we want to split it apart and do some or most of it in lost revenue or revenue loss, and some into the regular program. And here's where the split will come, only because I've had conversations individually with members of the select board on different things and what have you. Probably from a, shall we say, vast approach, the lost revenue is an easy way to go, and it opens up a lot of caveats. However, if we put it into revenue loss, then all those funds will be utilized within this town government. If there is any interest at all, which I think will come from the survey responses, of doing anything like using some of those ARPA funds for business help enhancement, help to nonprofits or anything like that, that cannot come from revenue loss. That would have to come out of the regular program money.
So you've said revenue lost and lost revenue.
Well, it's the same.
Same thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So you're,
So I know in a lot of the towns, I think Holyoke offered money to some hospitality businesses, so that would not be allowed under this scenario.
Right, and generally, of course, that's a larger community. The option for taking it any or all under loss of revenues is it caps at 10 million. So any community that receives 10 million or less, you have the option to take it all in loss of revenue. If you're receiving more than $10 million, you would at least be looking at taking, if you wanted to do some in loss of revenue, of splitting that up into the two separate pockets.
okay. So do we need to make a decision on that
No,
yet tonight? Or just
absolutely
to keep
not.
that in mind?
But if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think there's a wealth of information there, and I think it'd be great if it was all presented to the entire select board all at once. So knowing that our next meeting's the 1st, and that's probably too soon, maybe March 15th, designating 20 minutes on the agenda. By that time, the survey results will be in. The town administrator, in conjunction with the finance team, with the department heads, perhaps the chair's input, but not necessarily the whole select board, could come forward with a recommendation and the whole background and all the options, so that we're all being informed at the same time. Here's where we are, and I'm not saying the TA has to make a recommendation, but I mean, that would be a starting point for us to consider and get all the information at once and broadcast it.
rather than piecemeal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
that way.
Well, just understand the implications of what it really
And
means,
what-
whatever decision we make in terms of how we
Right,
calculate.
and what our options are, because
Yeah.
the clock's ticking, right?
Right. Well, and as you read that final rule, again, it's like, you can, you can read it different ways depending on what you're looking at too, sometimes too, so. Okay, so we will definitely get that, if not for the 1st, then certainly for the 15th meeting, hopefully sooner rather than later. And I will just say that the survey is closed, basically, today. I picked up a few surveys, hard copies, and there might be a couple stragglers that come in, and to the extent there's some in the box, I will count them in. I don't have an exact total yet, but we're close to 700, which I think is great. So that shows a pretty good response, I think, for people, both more online, but we've had some, I'd say about 75 anyway, that I've been trying to enter in with Megan Gentile's help to enter in the manual, the hard copies rather, online, so that those all get, compiled and calculated. So I'm hoping that we can get all that done and then generate some level of a report to show you all what people have said, and we'll try to get that done for the 1st if we possibly can.
Should I unlock that box and bring it in tonight when I leave then?
Probably wait till tomorrow, because there may be some that picked it up. I'll stop by tomorrow and check it out. That's fine. So that's moving forward, but I think, thanks everybody that did respond. I think we've got a pretty good response anyway, and we'll see what that tells us. Okay. Pomeroy Meadow Road acquisition, property for aquifer
You want to talk
protection.
about the application process?
Oh, I'm sorry, gosh, oh, good lord, sorry. I did that again. Yes, the application process, I'm sorry. This is something I think we talked about very briefly last meeting, about the need to have an application process. I've seen a few towns do that, other towns have had it, done it different ways, but been trying to keep an eye on what's happening around the area, and these are not local applications that I was able to find online, but there's a couple here from towns and a couple from counties. But it seems to me that this would be one way, sorry, for us to keep track of what we've approved and how much we've approved and where it's going and who's responsible for making it happen.
And some uniformity.
Yeah, exactly. And so I don't know if people have had a chance to look through and see if there's one or t'other that kind of strike their fancy. Some of them, I think, maybe ask a little too much that we don't need. Some of these from the county level might be a little bit too much, but yet there are some good questions on them. So I guess my thought was that if we had some ideas of, if there was one that we kind of liked as a model, that we could then pick and choose some other questions perhaps from a couple of others. And if somebody would like to work with Ed, or Ed, if you wanted to do it yourself, I don't know how you've got many things on your plate here, but to compile our own draft application form that we would use for town departments as well as other committees in town. And so I don't know what people's thoughts are right now, but if you've had a chance to look at them, is there one or two that kind of,
I like the Lincoln one. I think it's, it's, what is it?
yeah, it was the
Two or
town of
3
Lincoln,
pages?
right?
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I think that it just seems like a little bit more straightforward.
What was helpful about that one is because it was actually filled out. So you could kind of see
Right.
how it would sound by, any kind of a committee. This happened to be their conservation department that put in a request for parking lot repairs in the town of Lincoln. And they, the questions were, pretty straightforward.
There must have been another handout that went with it, I'm imagining. So it just starts off what department or committee is making the request, ARPA item project requested, and then ARPA eligible spending category. So they must have been provided with the 3 basic categories.
Well, it probably would have been the
ARPA categories.
the final rule.
There's a link here.
Kind of thing, yeah,
They have a
right,
link
exactly,
here.
yeah, right. The definitions and the FAQs, yeah. Right.
But then executive summary, and that goes into a lot of detail. Population to benefit, fiscal year impact. Does requested project involve a third party? Total amount requested. And then there's a bunch of sub-questions like, is this for a capital item or for the operating budget? Anyway, it just seemed like it's 3 pages long, and then they asked for attached photographs and things like that.
That would be primarily, I think, after the project, well, I guess it could be both before and after, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The one question I thought that was good, we had talked about it a little bit, was if it was something for operations, is this going to be, resulting in recurring expenses? And I think that's something that we had
Right.
talked about, that we wanted to know that ahead of time. And if so, what are people thinking that are proposing this? How are they proposing to handle that? And if they have any other sources of funding that they're already applying toward this, whatever their project is. So, yeah, I found Lincoln very straightforward. But anybody else? Any other thoughts on any other questions that you saw maybe in others that were different? I don't know.
I think the simpler the better, but I mean, you don't want them writing a
Right.
grant request, but
No.
proposal.
Yeah,
but-
for example, the city of Monroe, wherever that one was, I
Yeah,
forget.
that was
it-
Yeah, that was very
way-
lengthy.
a bit too much. I think that was
Then
far too
another
many.
one had a checklist, which seemed like a good idea, too. But hopefully people are
Yeah.
inclusive when they fill out a form.
Right. I guess the one I had a question on is it's the second page, the Beaver County one, page 3, the duplication of benefits. And this was a thing here, the Stafford Act clause in here, just describe any other federal funding to ensure that we don't have duplicate assistance. I'm just wondering if that's something as a statement we should have in our application. I don't know. I mean, this was at a county level, so it was probably, they're looking at it through a different lens, so I don't know if it really would apply to a town level. But just to say that we're not duplicating other government efforts towards the same project or something like that. I think that's all it's trying to say.
Is that a requirement of the ARPA funds, Ed, do you know?
Know that it is.
Where are you looking?
Under the Beaver County, the first page, so
Page
page
three.
3, top of page 3, Beaver County.
Yeah.
It's in prior assistance, duplication of benefits there. They just have a statement in there, and the applicant is supposed to say, yep, describe any other federal or state funding you've applied for to address the same problem, and, I promise we're not, duplicating funding from the government. I guess
Yeah.
that's what, I mean, it seemed like it was a wise thing to do, but I don't know that I would assume that we'd do that at a town level. I don't know, it's appropriate probably at a county level, but
I guess the question is, do we keep this all internal to the town, or do we open it up to nonprofits?
yeah,
Right.
Because that would be a question
yeah,
at that level, right? I mean,
yeah,
Right.
we're not gonna pose that question to Randall,
right.
but,
So, yeah, so that might be a
But
question.
but for outside groups where we're not aware,
Yeah,
correct.
That
As
would
Ed
be a
described, depending on how we vote to allocate that money,
correct, yeah,
may make that a mute issue,
okay,
or may not.
yeah.
yeah,
True.
okay. Anyway, that was the only thing that I saw that was vastly different among the other applicants that were.
Unless they've like applied for a grant or something.
Yeah,
That, yeah, we should be aware of.
So, I don't know, we'll have to think about that, but I think you're right, as we determine how we want to, spend the funds in terms of what pool of funds we're talking about here, and whether we want to broaden it out to like nonprofits, that may be something we'd have to consider, but, okay? Any,
Well,
Any
that's
other
when this other one that's on, I can't pronounce it.
which one?
Sagda-
Oh, yeah,
Sagadahoc.
Sagdahoc in Maine, yes.
I mean, they're first in the request for information. If we're going to go out to other than town
Right,
departments, this would, some of this information would be important to have.
right, right. Okay, all right. Okay, so I'm hearing Lincoln, anybody else think about that as a one to work with, and then try to see if that is comprehensive enough, and
I think it's a great starting point.
if.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Yeah, all right. And Ed, do you want to try and tackle that, or do you want some help with it? Okay,
I'm willing to help you with it, Ed, if you
Well,
want.
thank you, Rainey.
yeah, okay, sounds good. Yeah, let's see if we can get something drafted up, because I think,
Yeah,
I think we will do well by ourselves to have some level of application. And I've already mentioned to Kate at the Board of Health that we want them to, whenever we do this, whenever we get it, we will ask them to fill out what we've already approved, essentially,
Yeah.
so that we have a full record of everything that we've already spent.
that might be a good pilot, too, for the form.
Yeah, so, okay, Thank you for catching my overlook there. Next, Palmer Meadow Road, acquisition of property. And I'm gathering this is basically an informational piece, Ed, from the Water Department at this point?
Well, it is, and I was actually originally contacted
Excuse me.
Something gold.
from Kestrel, who was working with the Water Commissioners and the Open Space Committee about this. And the opportunity is coming up to acquire through a grant and CPC funds 83 acres along Pomeroy Meadow Road, which is directly over the Barnes Aquifer. So from the thought process or the standpoint of trying to protect and invest in the protection of our water supply resource for the town, I would say would be a key acquisition. And they had brought it to my attention for a couple of fold, because they know that I'm basically the contact to move some of this information forward to, the select board and other committees. So one of the pieces is they are going in front of the CPC committee next week to present to them for the first time. I thought it would be pertinent to try to bring the select board up to a date on this particular proposal before that happened. Number one, so you're aware of it. Number two, they are asking for letters of support to go along with their application, but clearly, it's a two-step process. Number one, they would have to get the authorization or the approval from the Community Preservation Committee to move forward with funds, and then also we would have to apply to the Water Protection Program, much like we did on the smaller parcel along Pomeroy Meadow Road, to apply for the grant. This would clearly need to the support of the select board to apply for the grant. It would also, in general, I mean, if the CPC goes for it, the select board would usually place it on the warrant, but even if they just placed it on the warrant, I'm sure it would go a lot further if the select board was also endorsing, this particular project and the importance of acquiring key open space parcels that are above and in the recharge area for the Barnes Aquifer. This piece, which will be going forward to community preservation, basically outlines the importance of it being over the Barnes Aquifer, the fact that currently the town only backup to our water supply is through the city of Easthampton. So it is important to protect our water supply and its recharge. They point out the fact, I think it was in 2015, and I think, I forget if it was 17, that both Easthampton and Southampton were noted nationally for the high quality of the public water supply that's provided. And it also basically points out how important the water supply came out, and I think it was the open space survey when we had redone that. They do point to the fact that while if the town did acquire the property through these two sources, that there could still be agricultural use on that property, such as haying or other uses. It's limited, obviously, due to like pesticide use and fertilizer use. I read that and I also wondered, well, geez, I can understand the haying and stuff. I wonder if there are more traditional crop uses that may be, and I know it takes like 3 or 4 years to get organic certified farm, but if there are organic type crops, possibilities that might be able to be utilized for that.
But I think the other 2 points they made in here, that it's also protection for both one of the Easthampton wells as well as our own town well. So that's
Right.
really, it helps out both towns, really. From the grant committee's point of view, I would just say that it's great to not have to worry about writing another grant, because it looks like the Kestrel Land Trust people have offered their staff person to actually assist with the grant writing itself, because this is a mass drinking water supply protection grant, which I'm sure is probably a little bit complex in its requirements. So that's a plus in itself. And then Kestrel would hold the conservation restriction on it, I guess, so that's.
Yes, and I forgot to
They're in
mention
charge of
that.
that,
Yeah,
so,
and-
yep.
and they've been working very strongly to that point. Bridget Lively from Kestrel has been,
Yep.
shall we say, very good and consistent with keeping me updated and trying to get my help in moving it forward. I will admit that when they first brought it to me, that I found it a little strange that I hadn't heard from the water commissioners on this particular project, at least as a heads up or whatever, but I followed up with Jim Malunas, and he said, yes, they had been working with Kestrel and Open Space on this. They were very much in favor of it. He told me that at the time, that they just hadn't taken a formal vote to move forward with it, and that's why he kind of hadn't said anything to me. I will tell you that the budget that's in here is now a little bit out of dated. Bridget had originally reached out to me and about the budget, and I had told her that from my memory of 111 Glendale, which is now called Clearwater Woodland, that we had allocated, shall we say, more than the $1,500 in legal fees for that. Was about $15,000. I had also confirmed with her that at the time we had utilized a budget figure for the survey of $10,000. That had come in at 11,400. And then Bridget did get back to me and say, thanks, that's helpful information. They will adjust that. She also got back to me today and said that the appraisal company had finished their formal appraisal, and the $385,000 was now $400,000, and I think it's $15,000. So that would be updated through the process. So
There's also an error on this. It's the legal fees, it actually is added up wrong.
Yeah.
Should be, at least, I know it sounds like it's going to change anyway, but 1250 and 1250 is actually 2,500, not 1,500.
Yeah. Yeah, so that internal budget there is not quite correct.
So I wanted to bring it forward, make you aware of it.
So do we need to suggest that we provide a letter of support for this if we're involved? Is that what we're?
If the board is comfortable with that, I would be happy to draft a letter and have the chair sign it,
And this would go to the
for them.
grant to the actual grant, not to CPC, but necessarily to the grant program one?
Be the
Or,
water department.
What's that?
There would be a letter in support of this project to the water department, right? Or no? Or to the grant, or the grant
I would be
committee?
to the,
Granting
The
off.
grant program,
yeah, the
yeah.
grant.
yeah,
Then I'll make a motion then to send a letter of support along with the grant application in support of this project and authorize our chair, Chris Fowles, to sign it.
I'll second.
all right. Any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No?
Okay, 4-1,
Thank you.
all right. All righty, let's see where, okay, close out of FY '21 financials. Where are we, Ed, on that with our consultant?
Yes, I do. And I will just let you know that I've reached out to Lisa for an update, and cash is complete, subledger to control account reconciliation is complete, commitments, abatements, and exemptions posted, except for a couple that have discrepancy, accounts receivable. She says Jennifer and she are working through each one, but there are a few issues. Ambulance receivables are complete. General fund fixed the errors with fiscal year '20 encumbrances, and next moving to debt posting errors. General fund, Bradley's getting the fiscal year '21 encumbrances, and the remaining interdepartmental transfers or reserve fund transfers, which have not previously been done. Enterprise fund, she's looking for the fiscal year '21 encumbrances for that. Special revenue funds, grants and revolving to set up a work paper and review. Capital funds reviewed and will do corrections which relate to mispostings in the general fund, debt trust fund complete. Agency funds, Fund 89 has payroll withholding errors from November to June, and she's discussed this with Bradley, and he's going to get the payroll registers for each week and do those correcting entries. She says that's a little bit tedious, but thinks she'll be able to do that and take that off her plate and save us some money at the same time. And statement and indebtedness reviewed and have one item that Jennifer is looking into for her. She actually did send out the request to start having weekly Monday meetings with Jennifer, Bradley, and myself, which we're going to do. And their target to finish everything is March 31st. Due to that, I reached out to DLS, DOR, and actually requested an extension for our Schedule A to be turned in, because otherwise, as of today, they could actually stop sending us our state aid payments. And Deb Wagner from DOR was very prompt. Our representative, Matt Andre, had sent my request along to Deb, and I think within a half an hour, she had a response back to me that, yes, due to our circumstances, they were extending our deadline for the Schedule A to March 31st.
Oh, that's good.
I just have one question. Ed, on the payroll withholding errors, are those just, do you believe those are just book entries, or is there any failure to turn over to the IRS?
No, absolutely no failure to turn over. That one had caught me because I'm thinking, and it's all in, the MedX and all that, and I'm going, I know when Jen puts them in and they come across and we, do all that, she's got the numbers on those, and they're always good. So right now, Lisa isn't sure if maybe there was, something in the SoftWrite program that on the other side had the wrong account numbers, or they were just, when they got posted for some reason, went into the wrong account or whatever. So, but no, absolutely nothing to do with not being turned over or whatever.
All right, so this is moving along, at least, and by the
Yes,
end
it
of
is.
March, we should be done with that, all right? One of the things we don't have on the agenda tonight, but we'll bring it up for the March 1st meeting, I think, is talking again about where we go forward with the audit. For the next round. We had some preliminary thoughts, and we need to come back around on that one. I don't think we'll discuss it tonight, but, okay. Any questions about closeout for 21? Any further? All right, if not, budget process for FY '23. How are we proceeding with getting things rolling on that?
Well, all the major departments have submitted, so any that are stragglers are all fairly small. I had Bradley send along, I think it was last week, all of the files that had submitted along to Vicki Morrow, chair of the Finance Committee, so they could start scheduling their meetings with the departments. And I'll have Bradley send Vicki an update of the ones that have come in since then.
Okay, all right. And do we have a sense when finance is meeting, John? Do we have a meeting? No? Okay. And you still want to, well, I guess after you meet this next time, maybe you'll have an idea of whether we want to do a joint meeting with Select Board and FinCom for some of them, or? We had talked about that maybe for the larger departments, but maybe after you guys have the first meeting to see what it looks like.
Yeah, I'll email the chair.
Yeah, okay, that would be good to know. All right, any questions about budget process, anybody? All right, if not, next item, the model designer selection procedures or process.
Yes, and I went through and did some amendments and edits to that, shall we say, templated designer selection procedures process. It's here for your information if you would like to read it over between now and the next meeting, and get at that meeting, make any suggestions for any further edits or have any questions for me. I am fine with that.
How long would this have to be advertised? Is it just 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
This is just the actual designer selection process.
Oh, the process, okay.
So if we were moving forward, it basically, it had something, it tells us
Yeah.
basically how the committee is going to be put together, that goes over those designer selections of how many that we expect to, come back and have interviewed.
Right.
Of that committee will make a recommendation to the select board. The select board will basically make the final decision, so.
Right. Yeah, and so then the RFQ, I guess, is itself is what I meant. And the RFQ that results from this would be posted for a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks?
Usually 3 to 4, yes.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And then you would still, in that RFQ, you'd be, if I understood this, you'd be listing at least the kinds of services we're looking for,
Correct.
right?
And then basically, due to how this is finally approved, it would, basically, you would pull those pieces of, okay, who's on that committee for this particular RFQ to, shall we say, go through them, score them, and then make out of that a recommendation to the select board.
This, I see this as kind of like, this is going to be our template going forward, whether we're building a public safety complex or whether there's a council on aging building.
Exactly.
Any municipal building. I think it's a great blueprint the way it is, and I don't know what everybody else thinks, but I'm happy to approve it tonight.
Yep, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I already read it through, and I don't have a single question or comment about it.
Yep. No, it looked very, very comprehensive, I thought. And I think, the advantage to this, hopefully, is that it will allow us to get a pool of of potential vendors out there, right? From engineering firms to landscape architects to whomever that we need when we think about the different kind of projects that come up, and trying to even imagine some that we don't even know about yet, right? To figure out if we have a pool of people that we can pull from, it just seems like this will help us move forward a lot faster. So,
And you've got it in place, which we're supposed to
yeah,
have in place to move forward. So
Right.
It was,
no, I think.
it was a missing piece.
This seems pretty comprehensive to me. I don't know, if anybody would like to make a motion, I'm personally.
I'll make a
okay.
motion to approve the model design selection procedures as outlined and presented.
And I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion on that? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. that
All right,
passes.
I will
You can move forward
take
with
the
that.
draft off it. I will put it on town letterhead, and I will bring it back for your signatures at the
Sure.
next meeting.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Very good, okay.
I just, well,
Yes, question? Yeah, sorry.
what is the supplier diversity office requirements?
Supplier diversity office requirement,
Yes.
just,
It's on the signature page, it's the last line.
I believe that is if the Commonwealth's contributing funding.
It is.
It's a requirement that they
But
have.
there's no, okay, I see the
What-
definition above.
above, yeah. Minority-owned business enterprises and women-owned businesses are part of
But
the
there's
process.
there's no listing. It's just by definition or interpretation. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Right.
That any project that we do that's funded by the state has to at least allow for those
Look
those
at what that is, yeah.
inclusions.
Right, and then the local community actually has a responsibility to say within those limits of what percentage of that project they want completed by the women and the minority-owned businesses.
Okay.
Yep, okay. Good, all right. Right, any other business that cannot wait till our next regularly scheduled meeting?
I just wanted to bring up the article in the paper today about the Southampton Meadows.
Yeah.
And to say that, like I mentioned, I think Jerry's been very involved in this particular residence and has had to go back in and, sign off on, the approval of safety and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering, since the Board of Health is meeting on Friday, Francine, I know you're not going to be there, so maybe John, in your behalf. I don't know if it's, or if you could just send something. I just wonder if there's anything that we can do to support or help the residents there. I know that the whole COVID, we had tried to, allot $6,000 for people that need housing assistance. It's not related to COVID per se, it's related to a water pipe. So I'm not saying that, that's something that we can freely offer, but I'm just wondering if there might be an opportunity, if there's something that as a community we can do.
They
There
went
was,
to the almoners?
I don't know, there was something on the warrant, it's all confidential, but there was something on the warrant to the almoners. I don't know if it involves anybody there or somebody separate, but I just don't know if there might be something we can do. So I know perhaps Jerry can reach out to the building manager that she knows, and perhaps, on behalf of us, see if there's anything that we might be able to do. I wasn't sure through housing. I mean, it's a HUD facility, whether it be through housing or through Board of Health. But it just seems like it would be nice of us to reach out to see if there's anything that we can do.
I guess I wasn't clear, in terms of the units on the ground floor, are some of them back in their units now?
Yes.
I think they were back in it, and they were also,
Yeah.
according to the article.
Yeah,
that
I
they
mean, lots
were,
of things were gone in terms of their belongings and
Yeah.
so forth, yeah. I know the second and third floor had moved back in way back when,
Way
but
back
the
when, yeah.
first floor had
Yeah.
been out, and not having the ability, I guess they finally got the ability to get reimbursed for their hotel costs, et
Right.
cetera, with that.
I mean, I know it's a
Awesome.
private, or it's an organization that, out of Springfield, that actually manages the building, but,
Right.
I mean, the residents of our town, and I think if there's anything that we could do or other people can do voluntarily, I'd certainly be willing to help out. I think that the nature of the building is that it's people who are elderly and people that have a disability, and, I mean, anybody being displaced and moving from hotel to hotel is going to be taxing, so just wanted to see if there might be something that we can do, and I'd rather it be somebody like Jerry, who's already had a relationship with the
Right.
building manager.
Okay. All right. Well, we can certainly make that known. It may not be on the Board of Health's agenda, I think, probably for Friday, because they're planning on talking.
I think they have two meetings. It's the joint meeting Friday night with the school committee, and then
Right,
their meeting
they have a
is
regular
on the
meeting on the
22nd.
22nd, I believe it is.
That's next Tuesday then.
Next Tuesday then?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I just thought, I
Okay.
just thought it'd be nice
All
to
right, yeah,
reach out.
right, good point. All right, thank you. Okay, if nothing else, we don't have any PCFs, PRFs tonight, no licenses, and so we do have a bunch of warrants. Francine, you want to run through those quick?
It's an accumulation here. Okay, it's P 22-30 payroll warrant for $291,923.39. Payroll deduction warrant 22-30 for $45,452.42. Another payroll deduction warrant, A, 22-30A for $166,009.53. Warrant W, a vendor payable warrant 22-31 for $304,764.32. Payroll warrant 22-32 for $292,927.02. Payroll deduction warrant 22-32 for $46,173.80. Vendor payable warrant, which includes the Hampshire Regional Quarterly Assessment, is $1,452,129.52. And then vendor payable warrant and encumbrance for the elementary school,
Usher.
Going around tonight.
W 22-33 for $3,449.40.
Quite a bit. All right, anybody have any comments or questions on things? I have just one, I just
I
wanted to
have
find
this
it.
one too, if you can find yours first.
I think one of them, I think there were a couple of, just the COVID-19 expenses under that old CARES Act account. I just want to be sure that they are, really from December, not anything into January, in terms of when they were incurred.
Yeah, you had brought those to my attention,
Yeah, there
so I
were a
will
couple.
check on them.
Yeah, there were a couple there on, I don't know where they were. I had them somewhere. It was under 2230, there was both COVID wages and extended sick leave, and then on 2232, same thing. And then the real question I had, though, is more on 2233, page 4, which is probably toward the very end. Just one that got put under, our contact tracer got put under COVID-19 again, and I just wanted to double check that, because if you recall, we had approved the the contact tracing under Arpa funds. That was one of our first ARPA
Right.
approvals.
Through June.
Yeah, so I just wanted to be sure that COVID-19 for Sharon Hart on
ARPA.
2233, page 4, just to be sure, if that is COVID, okay, if it happened in December, it may be a late billing, or if not, it may be misplaced and it may belong under the new ARPA
We need to set that up.
funds. It is set up, it's right below it.
Yeah, on the front page, yeah.
You've already got William E. Norris School and in Trivio Diagnostics there, which were our test kits, so that fund is right below it.
Why is that listed as Norris School, though? That was one of my questions.
Is that for the custodian?
I think
Custodian, probably.
What's that?
the one for Norris
The
School.
ARPA funds
under
expense.
ARPA.
It's $300, William E. Norris School.
Was that the,
Well, it's either police, the custodian, or the...
There's a separate ARPA funds on the police for a detail.
yeah,
So it must be the custodian then.
Where is it?
On page 4,
4,
just below what Chris was just mentioning.
yeah, I just want to be sure that,
Next to the
yeah,
last one on page 4.
as we start out. that we
ARPA funds
just-
expense, William E. Norris School, $300, and then the in Trivio Diagnostics is obviously the test kits.
Right.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So is the Norris School the custodian?
Whatever that expense was that we
And did
approved.
we approve that? I mean, that
Must have
seems like a
done
lot.
Yeah, well, that's just it. I mean, as we get going in ARPA, this is exactly why we need to
Yeah.
have that application form and be sure that we're
Right.
documenting,
Because we're
so.
already spending money.
Well, we are. I mean-
already approved the contact tracing
Yeah.
in June under this, so we're
Yeah,
Yeah,
already in there, so.
right, we
I
did
think
that,
having
and the vaccine clinic and the
Yes.
test kit. So we know that it's been focused on,
That's what it is. It's the detail for the vaccine clinic.
Vaccine clinic?
Thank you.
Is that the police detail?
Police detail, correct.
Okay.
Oh, so maybe that, is that labeled correctly, William Norris School? Is that, I mean, is that the right way to, whatever?
It should say
Oh,
vac-
this could be for the custodians then.
Yeah.
I think there was both. I will check and let you know.
Just-
It wouldn't be a bad
Well,
idea if
just
it says a vaccine clinic there
Or
somewhere.
something,
The
yeah.
other thing
just
is,
to get-
let's look at the.
Was there a police detail
Yeah,
mentioned?
let me see, yeah, I'll go back.
We
and
do
look.
not have the ability to print that extra detail.
Okay.
'Cause they
We
told
do
us
not
up
have
front.
the ability to print that extra detail.
Oh,
Many of our account numbers and stuff.
Right,
We
are-
can't even get the detail in there we want.
yeah, no,
yeah.
understood. Yeah, no, John said that there was one for ARPA, I thought, for
Police detail.
Yeah,
Let me see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay, I didn't
Yeah.
see that. Under the ARPA fund, though, is it somewhere else?
I don't know, I kind of flew through it,
Okay,
but
because there isn't,
That would be.
Yeah, well, you had
it'd be on
I
payroll.
think there was, yeah, because now you've got the two, I think there's two
Two
clinics
clinics.
that are covered in these.
yeah, there's 2 clinics they've had,
Yeah.
right?
And I
So-
think
Yes.
I may have seen one for the custodial work, so
Yeah.
I will double check.
Okay,
That's
just to
probably
double
what
check
that is.
we, just so that we don't start off wrong with,
Because actually, the school would not know
yeah,
our particular
right,
ARPA fund account number, because
Yeah.
that hasn't been shared with them yet.
yeah, so,
Here it is on 22-31,
okay,
page 5, ARPA Fund, Southampton Police Detail Department, $216.
okay.
How much?
216,
So it's less than the custodian?
looks that way, unless that's.
Yeah.
for-
216 is less than 300, that's
Yep.
correct.
Yes.
216, yeah.
Thank you, John. I knew that.
Unless the custodian,
Still don't know what the charges are, but.
unless the custodian was for both
Both
vaccination
clinics.
dates.
Yeah,
We
you
don't
don't
know
know.
that.
Yeah, we don't, yeah. Okay, so we've had some, just to say that as we're starting to see this
Right.
new account for the ARPA funds, I just want to be sure that we're
Right.
getting it rolling. And I guess a question I had with that, though, Ed, why do I see 2 different numbers for the ARPA funds expense? The police detail one says ARPA funds, and it's a different number than the ARPA funds expense one.
What page, please, and which
Yep,
vendor?
page 2231 warrant,
Yep,
page 5,
And then the one we just looked at.
second one from the top. The fund number is 244135. Second one from the top. And the one on the warrant we were just talking about
well, I can tell you exactly why.
says 245 135, so,
Because 244-135
Is ARPA.
dot 000, that's a revenue account.
well, it'll be there, right?
So I'm going to have to look and see if Ian put that in wrong,
Okay,
or if we did something
yeah, okay.
when
So
we
it's just-
entered it.
Just to say that, it's little stuff like that, but that's what
Yep.
gets us all
Yep.
confused, so.
I have
do-
one other question about
that.
it.
Yeah,
There
go
was
ahead,
an expense under the building inspector. I think there were like 5 or 6 entries that had Verizon Wireless.
Yes, he had agreed to cancel his town cell phone. However, we discovered that he couldn't cancel it, that came through my office, and it took Judy and myself at least 2 months to actually work through with Verizon and get everything straightened out on that so we could close it out.
Okay,
So now it is canceled.
okay.
All right, good. Okay, anything else from anybody? Nope. All right, thank you for that, and,
And thank you for catching that revenue number.
yep, no problem. And just, I think as we agreed last meeting, we will wait to see a revenue expense account for the March 15th meeting. Okay? All right, with that, we have just minutes to approve from December 7th, 2021.
I'll make a motion to approve, but I have amendments to make.
Okay. Would somebody like to second that, and then we'll open up for discussion and/or corrections?
I'll second it.
All right, John?
Starting on page 4,
Yep.
top part, the vote. I believe the vote is written incorrectly. I think the vote should be written 2-3-0. 4 against and abstained.
Correct.
On the first vote.
Oh, yeah.
Two,
You're right, at the top of the
Right.
page, top, page 4, should be,
Right now, it's written 2, 4, 0 against, 3 people abstained. So it should be 2,
Right,
2,
right.
3, 0.
230 instead of 203.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You find that, Ed? Top of
I
page,
see it, even though that the
yeah.
explanation is correct.
Well, okay, and I'm happy to leave it that way, but this continues all the way through. Page 5, the vote is 4 in favor, 1 against, 0 abstained, but the vote was actually 4 in favor, 0 against, and 1 abstained.
Yeah.
And then on the back, page 6, the same thing, 1 person abstained.
That was on minutes to approve,
Yep.
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 so it should be 401. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yep.
And the first one is, okay, yeah, page 4, right, Jen? 203?
Yep.
Yep,
Got it.
Right, so it should be 2, 2, 3.
230. 230.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then page 5 should be 401.
And you'll never get a grammatical correction from me, so that's all I have.
Yeah, I've got one typo, just at the top of page 3, Ed. The consulting company is Stantec instead of Scantic, so it's Stantec. Top of page 3, the very first word.
You probably won't be able to see it.
Stantec.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. All right, any other
Yeah, just,
comments? Yeah,
I mean, if we're gonna be, okay. Top of page 4, first paragraph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines in, required to wear a mask, and she worried about mixed messages. There's missing a is. She is worried.
School and required to wear, and she worried. She is worried, okay, Ed is.
Yep.
All right. Yep, okay. Anything else?
That's all.
All set? Okay, with those corrections, could we take a vote, please? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? None. All right, we have this approved. Thank you very much. And I think with that in mind, we can take a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So
Oh, no,
moved.
we can't. Oh, wait, no, sorry, I missed a page. Do we have an update, one on pending item? Sorry. Should have turned my page. Clearwater Woodland, Ed, you told me you had an update.
Yeah.
If you would just
Did?
give us that. You talked to the lawyers on the
Did you talk
boundary
to
issue?
Kestrel?
all these.
Boundary issue from the lawyers on Clearwater?
Oh, I talked to Kestrel.
Oh, okay.
And Kestrel, yes, Kestrel was fine with our planned methodology of notification, of actually allowing them to, giving them notice, but allowing them to leave it up to a time that in the future when they might transfer or sell the property to another entity.
Okay.
They said they actually had used that on, previously, not on a fence, but in the case of sheds that were over the property line or what have you. The one request that they did have is that we put, if we can, I'll have to talk with Katie and find out how we can do it, of making sure that this doesn't fall off the radar, and maybe, I won't say maybe, but if we're able to actually noting it in the registry on the deed of the property that has to take place.
Yeah, then it would be a little bit more visible and permanent, yeah.
Which also reminds me that I owe you some information that you asked me for on that particular subject, so, sorry,
Okay.
Joy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
I'm
the
patient.
letter would be drafted by KP Law for the Beagle Club, is that right?
Yes.
And is Kestrel copied on that, or are they, yeah,
Well, Anything to do with
yeah,
that issue going forward, we will copy Kestrel on.
okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think there weren't any other updates, am I correct, on pending items that I
You're
heard?
correct.
Heard about? All right, so
But
then
then
with
I
that.
forgot about that one, too.
Yeah,
so.
no, I hadn't turned my page, I'm sorry. So with that, let's have a motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.